So how many people have you got there so far, Graham?
There's 19 here at present.
Woohoo! Hello, Chrissy. Oh, are you in room 16A?
Yeah, we're in 16A.
Ah. Oh, thank you, David. That's brilliant. Thank you very much. You still got little flowers on them.
Here you all are, lovely people.
I've got loads. Do take them to see it, yes.
Okay.
Just a couple.
2 slit lamps, isn't there?
I thought there were 3.
So I might do.
Take 3. Take 3. Oh, I know. It's ridiculous. Where's Jazz? Why hasn't Jazz got her camera on? No, she's got to put a camera on. She's not allowed. Where? Which one is she?
Yeah, where's the volume on this one?
If you hover over your name or if you wiggle around, there's a mute button. Super. We'll just give people a couple more minutes to come and join us. Hello, iClinic. I can see you. Hello. Hello. Hello, everyone. Hello, all 22 of you so far. More coming now.
Graham, will you just show me where the chat is so that I can see the conversation? Is it? Can I move it to the side?
Yes, you can. It might. It will be dependent on you. So okay. Here you'll be able to change where things are.
Lovely.
What I'm going to do is I'm now going to stop sharing.
Do I? I'm trying to get out of the way.
It's fine because we'll swap them.
Oh, okay. They might not be able to see me now.
They will.
Hello, everybody. Feel free to play around with the views as well. So I know Zoom is new to quite a lot of you. So if you hover around, I can see that there are, goodness knows how many of you in here now. 24 of you in here now.
Woo, lovely.
Hello. Rachel, I know we have a fairly packed agenda. So did you want to
start? Yep.
Yeah.
Lovely. So welcome everybody to our Autumn Outpatients Forum. And thanks very much for finding the time to join us. It would be great if I can ask you all to turn your cameras on for the meeting. This will hopefully make it feel more friendly and more like a real meeting, more collaborative.
Hi.
Hi. So click where it says start video and we'll be able to see you. We'll be able to see each other even better. Lovely. Lovely. Come on, Jazz, where are you? And you can raise your hand. So down at the bottom, if you play along with the bottom line, where it says participants. No, hang on. Where's the hand, Graham? Where is it?
So if you select participants,
Yeah.
you will be able to then click. You should then have some options there where you can either
Oh,
say
yeah.
yes,
Raise
no,
your hand.
raise your hand, and then we can see if you've raised your hand, if you've got a question that you want to ask, but you just want to
That's it.
wait a little.
So we want this experience to be as interactive as possible. So we'll be asking you to submit your questions through the chat feature as well. So just anything you like, well, relevant, ask your questions. So I'll just quickly run through the agenda. So we've got at the beginning, we've got one of my lovely nurses, Kate Coman, doing a presentation about one of our innovative practices we've developed during COVID to improve our patient experience. We've then got some really exciting guests from the Royal Berkshire, Sherwood Forest and Hull University Teaching Hospital to share with us what they've developed and their restoration plans. And then we've got Sheila Glenn from the Transformation and Restoration Programme and to give us an update. Then we've got a small break where you'll see the screen breaker and you can go and have a drink or whatever you want to do. And then at 10 to 3, we're back on track with Debbie Whitaker, our Deputy Director of Nursing, talking about the transgender policy and guidance, and also about the equality delivery system. And that's going to be supported by Amrita Kulkarni and Ruby Allen. And then we've got a section at 3:20 about patient transport with Nigel Briggs from ERS and Elaine Stone from ESEC. And then we're going to have a quick update on the Shared Decision Making Council. And then finishing with us all just talking about the future of the Outpatient Forum. So that's it. Over to you, Graham, well, shall I introduce Kate? Are we ready for Kate's presentation? Have you got her presentation there to share?
I do indeed.
Fabulous. So I'm just going to swap chairs with Kate. Here we go. I think, will Kate be able to control this or will you do it for her, Graham?
I will gladly control it for her. Kate, if you want to.
Say next slide.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Give us a wave, Kate. Lovely.
Would you like me to start?
Yes, I can't see you at the moment. Are you on screen? Have you? Yes, there you are. Go for it, Kate. Go.
Okay. Hello, my name is Kate Coman. I'm one of the assistant practitioners in the eye clinic. Myself and my colleague Hayley Havard, who is one of the medical retinal specialist nurses, have produced this presentation and I would like to share it with you.
Next slide.
Next slide. So this is the introduction to our medical retina service at the North Norwich University Hospital and the Central Norwich Eye Clinic. And we'd like to present to you some of the changes that we have made during the pandemic to help reduce the risk for patients attending the ophthalmic outpatient department. This presentation will focus on patients with medical retinal conditions who are treated with intravitreal injections as part of their care. Next slide, please. So this is just a diagram of the structure of the eye, just to give you a basic overview of which part of the eye we're talking about. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the retinal conditions that require intravitreal injections are age-related macular degeneration, diabetic macular edema, retinal vein occlusion, myopic choroidal neovascularization, and cystoid macular edema. These conditions lead to excess fluid at the back of the eye, which can be sight-threatening, and needs to be treated with an anti-VEGF drug. This is injected into the eye and helps to reduce excess fluid. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the outline of the medical retina timetable pre-pandemic, January 2020. We offered a 2-stop service, so it was 1 visit for the appointment and then 1 visit for treatment if needed. There were separate clinics for all different retinal conditions. Appointments were all face-to-face with clinicians for patients, and patients requiring injections could have to wait up to a week for treatment. And on average, we did 37 injection lists per 4 weeks over the 2 sites. Next slide, please. So this is an adaptation to the medical retina timetable during phase 1, April 2020. So Central Norwich Eye Clinic was temporarily closed and all services were moved to the Norfolk and Norwich University Hospital. We introduced the one-stop service combining all retinal patients to the MedRet 1 clinic, where patients were assessed and treated on the same day if required. There was a reduction in face-to-face contact with clinicians for all stable patients. And on average, we did 39 to 40 injection lists a month with continuous review of the service, and we added ad hoc lists if required. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is how we adapted the medical retina timetable during phase 1 to phase 2. Central Norwich Eye Clinic was reopened in June 2020. And this allowed for increased capacity and gave the patient more choices to which places they want to go for their treatment and follow-ups. And it also gave us more space, so we were able to still keep the safe social distancing. Next slide, please. We managed to increase the patient number for the MedRet 1 clinic, so it enabled new patients to be seen sooner, less delay in follow-up appointments, and this increased efficiency with a constantly evolving system using feedback from all members of the multidisciplinary team. Next slide, please. And where capacity allowed, we continued the one-stop service for intravitreal injections. This reduced repeat hospital attendance and enabled a more efficient patient pathway and the instant treatment for patients with sight-threatening diseases. Next slide, please. And we also introduced a regularly timetabled retinal imaging clinic. This is a review clinic for all stable medical retinal patients who are assessed by nurses in the clinic. And on arrival, they have a visual acuity, an intraocular pressure if needed, dilation drops if they're diabetic, and assessment questions are asked. The appropriate imaging scan is done by an ophthalmic photographer, and then the patient can go home. The notes and the images are then reviewed by a clinician within a week, and the patient is notified of any change of plan of care or any plan of care by phone or letter. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is this slide shows the adaptation to the medical retina timetable during phase 3. So Saturday clinics have now been restarted. These are less busy than the weekday clinics, and it also gives more choice for patients who work Monday to Friday, and it's obviously a lot easier to park at the weekend, so it's a little less stressful for patients. We've expanded the clinics at the Central Norwich Eye Clinic. We've now introduced additional standalone injection lists to free up one-stop slots. And we are continuing with the Retinal Hub because it allows more patients to be seen per session. And it also provides a good learning environment for specialist nurses who normally would only see age-related macular degeneration patients. And we've also introduced the one-stop new wet AMD referral clinic. This is for new patients who are referred from opticians and then seen by a consultant and diagnosed, and treatment started on the same day if needed. Next slide, please. So in summary, we have changed the two-stop service to a one-stop service permanently where capacity allows. We've amalgamated clinics to include patients with a variety of retinal diseases. We've managed to maintain injection list numbers during all 3 phases. And our Central Norwich Eye Clinic was temporarily closed during phase 1. It's now reopened. We have the permanently timetabled retinal imaging clinic, and Saturday clinics restarted in phase 3. Next slide, please. So in our evaluation, during our challenging period, we have adapted to a new way of working in a short space of time. As a team, we are constantly evaluating and changing the way we work to provide a safe environment for both staff and patients. Our aim, as always, is to reinforce the trust pride values to enable the highest standard of patient care we can deliver. We are in the process of auditing parts of the service, as we are aware that change for some patients is not always a positive experience. From these results, we can move forward in the knowledge that our service encompasses patient and staff input. We're very proud to be part of this hardworking and dedicated team. For the unknown future, we continue to strive to constantly evaluate and adapt our service. Thank you for listening. Final slide, please. Any questions? Any questions?
There hasn't been any come through the chat so far, apart from DR1, who said and Chroma in part of your as part of your thing. Erica Betts has got a question. Have you had any feedback from patients to say how they feel about the new service?
I think most are happy with it.
I think a lot of them are very happy with it
Yeah.
because they're getting their injection on the same day, which makes a big difference for a lot of them.
So where's
The
my
only
camera
thing is
got come
that
up?
with the reduced time with the clinician, some of them feel a little bit deprived of a chat with their consultant or clinician. But other than that, it was really efficient.
Well, you can see actually.
Safe.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Okay. Lovely. Thank you ever so much, Kate. That's brilliant.
Thank you for listening.
So we'll swap back.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Kate. So the next thing on the agenda is sharing the learning from other trusts. So back to you, Graham.
Indeed. And yes, we're very fortunate to be joined from some other trusts this afternoon. Apologies. If you see me clicking away, Zoom has a very handy feature whereby there's a waiting room, which they've just introduced to everybody. So I have to click and invite and add you all in. So if you see my hands doing this, it's fine. Yes, so we're joined today by Sherwood Forest and by Royal Berkshire and by Hull. And let me just bring up the first of today's chats, which is, I think, from, if I'm correct, Sherwood is going to go first. Are you here, Sherwood? And can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Excellent. Hello, lovely ladies.
Are you ready for us to share screen or not?
No, yes, that's right. Yes, I'm ready for you to share the screen. That's why I can't find your presentation.
Yeah. Bear with us. Because we've still got a monkey up here now.
Fabulous. Well, I will stop sharing and I will allow you to share.
Well, we're now going to say yes. And there it is. There we go. Hopefully. Can you see that?
I can indeed.
1 minute. We're just trying to find the right button so we can get going.
So welcome, Lynn. Welcome, Anne. For those of you who are on Zoom, if you wiggle and find Smart L, she should be at somewhere around the top of your screen. But Smart L is Anne and Lynn. So over to you guys.
Okay, so we'll just start then here. So Graham's asked us to come today to share with you our outpatient improvement program. This was a presentation that we first gave in 2019 in London. So we'll just introduce ourselves to you. So I'm Lynn Smart. I'm the head of nursing and AHPs for diagnostics and outpatients.
Hello, I'm Anne Gray. I'm the patient services manager and I manage the large majority of our patient admin team, including outpatients.
So Anne's just going to go to the background so I can take she's going to go a long way away so I can take my mask off. Oh, that's better. Okay, so we started our journey in 2015, and at this time we had 9,613 unreconciled appointments. We had 8,645 overdue reviews. We had a 70% clinic utilization, and that was the best we had. So many of our clinics were running half empty. We had a 12% and above DNA rate. And we had over 200 sets of missing notes every single month for clinic appointments. So just to give you a little bit of background of how we actually got into that position, it was really mainly due to two major events. The first, the trust was facing significant financial constraints. So they decided to undertake an admin review. And as a result of that, we lost a high number of patient admin roles. Then in October 2014, we actually migrated onto a new PAS system. And this actually affected our ability to reconcile appointments, and we ended up with this huge backlog of 9,613 unreconciled appointments. That wasn't the worst. The worst was yet to come, because then in 2015, we were inspected by the CQC, and our outpatients was rated as inadequate. The trust was placed in special measures, and we received a section 29A sanction. And I don't know if everybody knows what that is, but that is an enforcement notice, which means you have to make improvements within the time frame set by the CQC, or you risk being closed down. So things were pretty grim. We also want to share for you what this felt like for our patients. What did it mean for our patients? They were receiving their appointment letters after the dates of their appointment, so it was pretty chaotic. They couldn't contact the appointments team to cancel or change their appointments because we had no staff. This resulted in really high levels of DNAs because they couldn't change the demographics, so we were sending letters and appointments to wrong places. They didn't receive an appointment letter on time, or they just didn't receive it at all. So we had some pretty angry patients. So then if they actually managed to get to the hospital, they then had to tackle the car park. And this is what our car park usually looks like. It takes at least 20 minutes to get through that. And then when they'd managed to do that, if they actually managed to get to the clinics, they were then met with faulty or broken self-check-in screens. If they actually managed to get to the right place, and often they didn't, they were then faced with long waits in clinics because we couldn't find their notes. So sometimes they'd sit there for 2 hours or more. And if it was too late, the clinician would then say they wouldn't see them. So our patient experience was really, really poor. We had about 130 concerns and complaints every single week. And all I did all day long was apologize to patients or answer complaint letters. So it was pretty, and this is the point we started. So what did we do? So the first thing we did was we set up an outpatient improvement board. And this was executive led. And initially we met every single week. We had daily cross-divisional meetings to discuss all outpatient waits, because all of our waits were on different lists all over the place and patients were getting lost everywhere. So we looked at all of our waits, ASIs, overdue reviews, everything. And what we did with them was we developed outpatient dashboards and scorecards, and we shared these at performance meetings. It was the first time we put all the waits in one place so that people couldn't get lost, and we could see every patient was waiting and how long they were waiting. And then what we also did was we developed a business case, and we got the investment for additional admin staff to put all the posts back that had been taken out previously, and to develop some new call center technology. With that, I'm going to hand you over, and I'm going to go to the back and let Anne come.
Just while you're doing that, I'm just looking through the chat, saying that quite a lot of this resonates with us.
I'm glad we weren't on our own. So from the picture that Lynn has painted so far, I'm sure you can all imagine we had a mammoth task on our hands in order to rectify all of those problems. But clearly that was something that neither Lynn nor I could do on our own. And we were lucky enough to be given carte blanche to pick our own team to help us resolve all of these issues. So throughout this period of time, we've had a very committed and cohesive team behind us. And they're so committed that I was able to coerce them into helping out with this presentation. So first of all, I'm going to ask Sarah, who is our outpatient booking manager, to tell you a bit about the problems that she had and changes they made. So let's move on and try and set Sarah's little video going.
Hi, I'm Sarah Chinnery, Outpatient Booking Manager. As part of the Outpatient Improvement Programme, the Trust invested in additional staff. This enabled us to build a booking team and call centre which could provide a service to patients outside of normal working hours. We now open Monday to Friday, 8 AM till 8 PM and Saturday mornings. We also implemented call centre technology, which has enabled us to manage call queues and demand coming into the call centre, therefore creating a better patient experience. The technology also enables us to look at past performance as a department, but also at an individual level, therefore enabling us to look at areas of concern and respond more quickly. I believe most trusts will have a DNA problem. When we first started our journey, the DNA rate was 12%. We therefore introduced a programme to reduce DNAs. This has included the introduction of a text, voice and letter reminder service. The call centre also plays a pivotal role in reminding patients of their appointments, and we perform a deep dive weekly so the call centre can concentrate on contacting patients in the outlying specialties. As we found the text reminder service was such a success with reducing our DNAs, we've now adopted this service for our partial booking process, and all patients are now sent for in this way. As we are always looking for ways to improve processes and services we provide to the patients, we were more than happy to be one of the 2 pioneering sites to work with the NHS England and our local CCG to achieve paper switch off for ERS. I feel the improvements made within the booking team have enhanced and improved the services we provide to patients and support the trust values. Feedback from staff has also been positive. They now feel supported within their role and morale within the departments has improved.
Right, thank you to Sarah for that. So just to summarise then, the improvements that were achieved in the area of booking. So we developed the call centre team, implemented the call centre technology, which as Sarah mentioned, has enabled us not only to monitor the calls and manage the queues. So at very busy points, we can actually pull staff in from other areas to help with the telephone calls to bring the queues down. But it also helps us monitor the work of the department and, where necessary, monitor the work of individual members of staff if we have any performance issues. So it's really useful. As a result of the work with text messaging, reminders, etc., our DNA rate has now reduced from 12% to 6%. Hasten to add that during COVID that may have slightly increased, but that's where we were at pre-COVID. Our clinic utilisation increased dramatically from 70% to 90.6%, and we did achieve the 100% ERS paper switch off, and we're one of the first trusts to do that. So that team did a really good job in making those improvements. So secondly, we're going to ask another member of our team to give us some details of their area, and that's Jill, who is our outpatient reception coordinator. Prior to the improvement programme, the team in KTC reception had become quite dysfunctional and de-skilled. As part of the cull of the admin staff, there was a threat, in inverted commas, to the KTC reception staff that we were going to actually move them all out of their individual clinical areas and have a centralised reception desk. Everybody felt that this was the wrong way to go, so we lost a lot of staff moving to other areas to avoid having to do that. We then were advised that we needed not to appoint permanent members of staff because we didn't want to have to make staff redundant at a later stage. So morale was really poor at the beginning of this programme. So let's let Jill tell you a little bit about what happened in our outpatient reception.
I'm Jill Russo, KTC Outpatient Reception Coordinator. So after the 2015 CQC inspection, the Trust decided to invest in the reception staffing, which allowed us to reorganise our team. This ensured that we could cover all desks throughout the day, including dinners and weekends. Areas which cover in 3 desks. There's much more of a team environment, not only with in reception team, but also within the clinical team that are linked to those areas as well. It's encouraged staff to take ownership of their 3 areas, which has also helped focus on the unreconciled position within those areas. We also looked at the training within reception and developed SOPs and user guides for each area. From doing this, we decided to appoint a reception trainer. So this has not only helped with the quality of work that's been provided by the reception team, but it's also helped with the retention of staff and the mandatory training, which staff are now given enough time to get this done within work and are taken off the desk. Currently in the process of implementing the new Savient self-checking system within Outpatient. So this will help with the flow of patients through clinic, which will help with the receptionist. Although patients will still be allowed to book in at reception, it just helps with the flow throughout clinic and allows us to update data at the same time.
So thank you to Jill. So just to summarise the improvements we achieved in KTC reception. So, you know, as Lynn alluded earlier, we've got over 9,000 unreconciled appointments, and some of those patients' appointments had remained unreconciled for over 12 months. So I'm sure any of you that are clinically biased will appreciate the risk associated with that. So we're now in a position where 95% of our appointments are actually reconciled within 5 days, and all of our appointments are reconciled within 10 days. Again, I will admit that that has been an added challenge during COVID with the increased number of virtual clinics being run. For some reason, clinicians find it very difficult to let us have the reconciliation slips back if it's a virtual clinic, but not when it's a face-to-face. So that's a bit of a challenge, but we're reasonably on track still. As Jill mentioned, we upgraded our Savient system. We'd had the original basic service, and we've now got an updated version, which allows patients when they're checking in to update their own demographics. They don't get sent to the reception desk if their address is out of date, etc. They can do that for themselves. So that has helped with our DNA rates. Definitely, we've seen a huge improvement in morale amongst this team. They feel that they're listened to, they've been invested in, their training is important to us. And this was borne out in our national staff survey for this particular area. And Lynn and I are particularly pleased to note that our concerns and complaints have reduced now to less than probably 2 a week. And a large proportion of those complaints relate to the car parking. And so far, Lynn and I have avoided taking responsibility for that. So that's been very good. And Jill, who presented to us then at the end of this particular year, was the winner of our Rising Star Award at the Trust Staff Excellence Awards because of the work that she'd carried out in that area. So that was really nice. And then we'll move on to what I often refer to as the Cinderella services of Case Note Store and PrEP. I think these are teams that are often forgotten because they're behind the scenes. However, when you've got 200 sets of missing case notes, you certainly become very much under the spotlight. So again, we'll play you a little video and let our team members themselves tell you about what they've done.
Hello, my name is Bernice Wilson. I'm acting Case Note Store team leader. And my name's Samantha Hill. I'm the clinic prep coordinator. At NNUH, there was a big reorganisation in Case Note Store. There's over 93,000 files, and we did have a lot of space, but a lot of the space was taken up as we was making a lot of new sets. At NNUH Case Note Store, we have over 93,000 files. To make sure all the notes fitted inside the filing rooms correctly and in a good order, we actually expanded the Case Note Store. So to do this, we actually developed 2 new Case Note Store rooms. We actually have 14 filing rooms at Case Note Store. We were actually working out of boxes in some of the rooms, and now we have a lot more space. Going on to misfiles, we do actually have a robust misfiling process in place. We actually have a scorecard where the staff can see all the misfiles that are in each month. Also, they're able to see all the temporary sets of notes that are made as well. This is really good. So what we actually do is we fill out the misfile sheet and make sure that all the sections are done correctly. So make sure that all the misfiles are located either by looking, mixing up the dates, and just making sure that all the misfiles are located and ready for the clinics on time.
So following on from that, although we do have misfiles, we currently have a 99% case note availability. So we make sure that all the notes are ready for outpatients, and that's what my department deal with. So once the notes have come down from case notes, we make sure they're ready. So having 99% case note availability means that actually, you know, we've got everything there ready for the clinic appointment, and there's nothing there that's not available for the consultant to be able to do their job. Also, we prep 27,000 sets of notes a month, which means that actually having the 99% case note availability is absolutely excellent, and that's what we pride ourselves on in both departments. We've recently updated our user guides and SOPs, which helps the new staff coming in and also the old staff. This is for all the different elements to the job, and it just means that it flows better and you can have individual parts to them rather than having one big booklet that they've got to go through. Over the last couple of years, we've worked really closely with our teams to boost morale, and by doing this, we've included the teams more and included them in the discussions so that they feel more a part of the bigger picture, and this has helped to definitely improve the departments across both sides.
In Case Next Store, we actually have comm-cells, and we have these each morning. So these comm-cells will take place anytime from 2 to 5 minutes or even longer if needed. And what we actually do to make sure that all the team are involved, I'll just see if the staff have any new ideas that they want to share, any issues, and we can actually discuss about these each morning to make sure that the team are working in a good order and to a high standard.
Okay, final thank you to Sam and Bernie there. So just to summarise the improvements we've achieved in these areas. So as Sam mentioned, we now actually achieve regularly 99% case note availability for clinic appointments. And it was worth noting that when the CQC visited us in 2018 and we showed them our record availability, I actually think they disbelieved what I was telling them. And they certainly did a lot of searching around this issue, talked to lots of people, including the staff in Case Note Store and Clinic Prep, Lynn as my manager, etc. But clearly we were able to demonstrate that we do regularly achieve this. They even spoke to the nurses and outpatients who said, oh God, yes, it's much improved. We used to have loads of notes missing, we now hardly have any. And this was really, really good because when we actually got the final report from the CQC, this was actually mentioned in the report. So my staff were absolutely delighted. Prior to the improvement work, our clinic prep team were dotted around little corners, cupboards, back of receptions all over our outpatient department. So part of the aim was to bring that team together in one place. So with lots of moving various people around, we managed to relocate them into the same building as Case Note Store. So we've now not only got a much more cohesive clinic prep team, we've actually got two teams that actually didn't really know each other. We're at opposite ends of the site, so therefore there was a bit of them and us and a bit of conflict between the two teams. They now work very closely together. We've actually seen a lot of cross-working between the departments. They certainly support each other and they certainly understand each other's problems, which has really helped. Sam also mentioned the scorecard, which we developed, and you can see a copy of it in the background to this slide. And we share this regularly, both with the team, at our performance meetings and across the trust, so that everyone is aware of the good work that takes place up in Case Note Store and Prep. I think they forget how important and how much they do contribute to good safe patient care. And again, I'm pleased to say that jointly, these two teams were winners of the Non-Clinical Team of the Year award at the Trust Staff Excellence Awards in that particular year. So following on from this, we also have carried out a number of improvements in the nursing area of outpatients. So I'll just mention a few of the things that we've done. So we developed a handout or a leaflet for our ophthalmic patients, and that details for those patients what they can expect from the attendants, what problems to look out for depending on what they've been referred with, and who to contact if they have any problems, and especially if they don't receive details of their next appointment. We've also developed a Plastercast passport, and having recently had a broken wrist myself, I have used this and can say it was extremely useful. It certainly gave you details on how to look after your plaster, what problems to look out for, when to contact the hospital, etc., etc. So that was very helpful. We've also developed some extended roles for our healthcare assistants. Firstly, in the eye clinic, our HCAs have been trained to instill eye drops. So that has enabled us to improve the flow of patients through clinic. Previously, patients would have had to have waited for a trained nurse to be available to instill eye drops. We've now got more staff available to do that, which means patients can move on to the next step in their visit. We've also had a number of the HCAs in our fracture clinic who have been trained by the British Casting Society, and they have now developed their roles and have been identified as plaster technicians. So again, it's helped us with availability. We don't have to wait for trained nurses to actually do the plasters. We have technicians who can do that for us. And then we've also had some multidisciplinary team working, which the nursing staff and my team have been involved in. And that has been to improve the communications for our AIS patients, the Accessible Information Standards. So particularly for partially sighted patients, our letters can now go out on yellow paper and with a larger font so that they can be more easily read. And for our learning disability patients, we've also got improved communications. So our appointment letters, for instance, for a patient with a severe learning disability will receive their letter in picture format as opposed to the written word that you or I would receive. So that has improved things dramatically. So we've seen, as a result of the improvements in nursing, a reduction in the serious incidents in ophthalmology, and also the number of pressure ulcers found under plaster casts. We've seen an improved patient experience as a result of the reduced waits in clinics, and that's been borne out in our surveys and FFT results. Obviously, the HCAs have been really happy with the career development with their extended roles. And in line with the AIS standards, we've got those improved communications and reasonable adjustments for learning disability patients. We also telephone the learning disability patients in advance of their appointments to check if they have any adjustments that need to take place. And if so, we'll liaise with the senior nurses in outpatients to make sure that they take place. So just to summarise again some of our achievements, we've got 98.6% of our outpatients will recommend us to their friends and family. In the first year of our improvement programme, we made a cost improvement saving of 1.4 million, which is no mean feat in itself. But if you also consider that we invested in more additional clerical staff and introduced the call centre technology that year, that was a really big saving to achieve. And then in year 2, we made a further £260,000 saving. And then the icing on the cake for us was that in 2018, our CQC inspection took place and outpatient was then rated as outstanding. Thank you. But the cherry on the top of the cake was that we also won a Health Service Journal Award in 2018 under the heading of Enhancing Care by Sharing Data and Information. And this related to the work we've done with the communications for the AIS standard. And I'm going to hand you back to Lynn now to finish off.
Okay.
Sorry.
This is very difficult. We just wanted to give you a quick update of what's happened since, because obviously this was all 2018-19. So what we've done since then is we developed an outpatient transformation board, which is led by one of our execs, and it's now ICS wide. And that includes our connected knots who are leading our digital services. We've also implemented patient-initiated follow-ups in most of our specialties. Then COVID hit, and that's given us the impetus to actually achieve the national standards for virtual appointments for both follow-ups and new patients. So in some ways, it's been a benefit to us. We've also implemented during that time Attend Anywhere, which is a video consultation platform which is used in most of our specialties. And we're working with Connected Knots and Patient Knows Best to go live with digital letters from next week. And that's kind of where we are. The end.
Round of applause, please, for Anne and Lynn.
Back.
Yeah, quite a lot at the beginning of that. So the reason why I've invited these guys along is so when I heard these guys present this in 2018, this is at the time when we were plunged into special measures, and I kept a very close contact with Lynn and Anne, and also Yvonne Christie's also come from Sherwood to us as well. So a lot of you will know Yvonne through the Shared Decision Making Council as well. Thank you very much for that. There have been a few questions come in. If I can just jump to those, if that's okay.
Yeah, on now. No.
Super. We might also be joined by my 3-year-old at some point. So yeah. There's a question around how do our figures compare. I know that our DNA rates, for example, are around 5.7%. Last month they were at 5.2% compared to your 6%. And there was a bit of a, and I can share with people that our Power BI dashboard. So I'll probably do that so that we've got our view of the world.
By all means.
A question from Chrissy and Nick. If you can come off mute and ask your question. If not, I will do it for you. Okay. Do you have a centralised outpatients, or is it split into specialties?
We have a centralised outpatient service. It works really, really well. So all of the admin services, it all sits in one division. It all sits in diagnostics and outpatients. All the admin services are managed by Anne, and all the nursing staff are managed by my matron, Mandy. And together it works really, really well because we can get consistency across clinics, and we can share staff, skills. It works really well.
Super. Sheila, have you got a question or two?
I have, but I can't see them anymore. So I wonder if you can. Yeah. I think I put about 3 of them on.
Sheila Glenn, do you have a central reception for your video consultations? So we also use Attend Anywhere, and I think we're in the process of potentially using a central reception area.
What we're doing at the moment is we're setting it up specialty by specialty. Yep. So I'm trying to think. So orthotics were our first team to go live. So we set up a reception and a link for those patients. So they link into orthotics, but you could have respiratory, dietetics, dermatology all running on the same day, but they won't go into centralized waiting area. They'll all have a separate waiting area for themselves. I must admit, to a point, that was my nervousness, that you could end up with patients with same or similar names, and that was more likely to happen if you had them in one large waiting area. So we chose to do smaller waiting areas. And I do feel as well for the clinicians, when they go to pull the patient through to the consultation, they've got fewer names to look through. Although, of course, you won't have all of your patients in that, only those that have logged in early will be there anyway. But no, we do it separately by specialty.
Yeah, and we do that too. So at the moment they come in and they'll go to their waiting area depending on the specialty. Yeah. But one of the things that we were thinking about looking at was it's almost like a meet and greet service. So as they first come into the trust, if you like, sort of virtually, then they're met with somebody who can talk to them, who can make sure they're okay with their kit, and can very importantly update their demographics as well and those sorts of things. And then they will transfer them into ophthalmology, dermatology, wherever they need to go. So that's what we think about next.
Yeah, that's not something we're doing at the moment, but I do like that idea.
Particularly
about updating the demographics.
Yeah. This is a chance for us to steal from you, not the other way around, Lynn. No.
Share and share alike.
Share and share alike. A couple of other questions. I'll get to a couple of questions, and then we'll probably move on to the next presentation, if that's okay.
If you want to email anything to us, we're happy to receive them.
Super. The check-in screens, are they used during COVID, and who cleans them?
Right, that we haven't actually used them during COVID. We tend to get it as part of our reception duties to get the Clinell wipes out. We always leave Clinell wipes at the side of the screens as well, in case patients feel they want to clean it before they use it, if there's nobody actually stood by. Normally at the high usage screens, we will have a volunteer to support the patients as well, so they would help with cleaning. We are just contemplating switching them back on now that we're starting to restore further activity into outpatients. But no, we did switch them off.
Thank you.
Mainly because we had so few patients coming.
Yeah.
We could quite easily cope with the numbers that were coming to reception.
Super. I've got a question from Jordan as well around all of our numbers that we have, and yes, I have all that breakdown by new follow-up, etc.
A couple of questions. We have Daniel, who's locum, who's now based within the CRT. He's still sitting on our e-roster, as such. Yeah, he's actually moved.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just about how we do that.
I don't know. If you want to pick up with me afterwards, we'll sort out those kind of issues if that's okay.
If you could.
Yeah, just send me an email and I'll sort that out. Lynn, Anne, there has been some other questions around sharing.
One was around. It's Daniel Hashimi.
Okay.
It's HASHMI, I think. Hashmi.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that about? So if that's about e-rostering, as I say,
we have his full details.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I think it relates to locums again, because that he was one of the two that we were looking for. There's potentially another one that we can get, but they have quite good skills. And we were thinking about moving them onto the wards.
Well, okay. Sorry. Hello.
Virtual work for them.
Okay. With questions like that, can we please park them and we'll pick those up separately, if that's okay? As I say, just drop me an email and I'll.
We haven't been able to return.
Okay. That's fine. I will try and pick up those issues separately if I can. Lynn, Anne, there is a couple of things about you sharing maybe your dashboard, your presentation, and there's some other bits and bobs that people would like to be shared. I think your ophthalmology. There was the list that you talked about in ophthalmology and other things, and I'm sure that you would.
That's fine.
Fabulous.
Just send us the emails and we'll deal with it for you.
Excellent. Fantastic. So scorecards, AIS learning disability letter, and other things. And there's some lovely comments if you want to go and have a look in the chat.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Around all of that. Eileen, thank you very much, guys. Last round of applause from me, and by the looks of those with the video. Eileen, are you ready? And apologies for being slightly late, but if I bring up your presentation.
That's fabulous. Thank you very much.
And while I do that, did you just want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Eileen Henderson. I'm so sorry to have just jumped into the event today. We are all on a leadership in a crisis moment day training. So it was due to be in March, but postponed. So I think before the next session comes along, we are all doing that. So sounds as if there's been some fabulous ideas and things happening. So Graham's going to do my slides and presentation. Not my presentation, is going to do my slides for me. So do you want to put it on slideshow? Oh, great, thank you. Okay, so I know I have 10 minutes. So I've taken a bit of a different approach. I think Graham heard me speaking probably on an NHSI event a couple of years ago, but I've taken a sort of very much a here and now and how outpatients is currently. And this is not very much, this is not just my interpretation. This is only possible because of all the colleagues I work with. So I'm head of outpatient service for the Trust. I am an occupational therapist. I don't practice currently with patients, but every day I use my occupational therapy skills to problem solve, etc. So yeah, could we just move to the next slide, please, Graham? Okay, just the next couple of slides are really just telling you about Hull University Hospitals. We are a large acute trust on the bit further up the east coast to Norfolk and Norwich, just south north of the River Humber. We have two main hospitals, Castle Hill, which it looks very chic, but the picture is only of our oncology suite, and we have a mixed economy of accommodation. It's true to say Castle Hill was originally an infectious diseases hospital in the early 1900s, and we've still got some remnants of that on site. We have a lot of staff working for us, over 8,000. We are a tertiary centre for 1.6 million patients and provide local services for over 600. Next slide, please. Hull Royal Infirmary, again, this is sort of typical 1960s tower block. And we have got a couple of PFIs on site as well. And in the last probably 15 years now, we have a medical school on in the area, which has been fabulous. Okay, next slide, please. So I'm sure everybody already knows it, and probably people have said it in the last few presentations, but basically come COVID, we went from the 1940s to 2020 in a matter of weeks. It was change that we'd only hoped in our wildest dreams, really, with regards to the delivery of outpatients. But we are still very much the front door, and whilst we have targets around our emergency departments and everything, most patients actually come to a hospital initially as an outpatient. And I think with the changes, it's made us look much more carefully at pathways and what is beneficial for the patient rather than beneficial for us as a service. Patients don't fit into 9-to-5 services. They don't understand why we don't do Friday afternoon clinics, more evening clinics, or certainly weekend clinics. So there's a real benefit to sort of patients about having the opportunity really to go fast. As an organisation, I was whizzing this presentation past my husband last night, who's a local GP, and in GP land, they went from telephone calls to video calls like overnight, and we're still having a rollout program, and it's not been an easy sort of being open and bare. We've been looking at video consultations for about 3 years, looked at different companies, and now, like the other 177 organizations we are with, Attend Anywhere. We did adopt PKB last year, and all our main communication with patients goes out that way. And for a while, it was a bit of a game changer with consultants that they couldn't possibly phone a patient because the patient wanted to come to see them. But actually, just in a few weeks, the consultants love it, the patients love it. So it's definitely a winner. But I think we'd be remiss to suggest that outpatients can just close its doors and operate either virtually, whether it's a video or a telephone, because some patients do need to be prodded, poked, touched, whatever. And I think we've really still got to be totally mindful of that as well. Okay, next slide, please. So just a little bit more about us. I've been in post since 2016, 17, the back end of 16. We'd had our CQC visit, and there was no overall view of outpatients. We had our patient admin. We didn't know what our risk was. We'd no coordinated coordinated approach. So since then, we've really built up what is outpatients, who delivers it, and exploring lots of different things. So one of the things we really needed to understand was, where are outpatients happening? And we've currently got about 87 different locations, and that is because we have screening services for retinal screening, bowel screening, breast screening. We also have AAA screening, but we've got our midwifery colleagues, community midwifery, part of the acute trust. We have various cottage hospitals, various GP practices. But it's really important to know where our staff were working, to make sure that they were working within a professional and legal framework. Because if they were practicing in a department that wasn't fit for patients nor for themselves, we needed to be mindful of that and check the legalities around lease, etc., were in place. So we've worked very closely with our estates and development department to make sure that was all done. I've already mentioned that we've got the 2 main hospital sites, but within that we just don't have an outpatient department. We don't have a separate outpatient building. And I suppose come the revolution, you maybe would never actually design an outpatient department as it has been done in the past. So within the Royal, we've got 19 different departments. And at Castle Hill, we have 12. And that's a mixture of speciality specific, but also general departments, which in themselves have given us challenges. And we also lease an outpatient suite in a community hospital, which affords us 14 consultation rooms and an audiology suite. There, just to give you a bit of a size, we've got an amazing Power BI system, which happy to share with Graham. We can find out anything about outpatients we really want, you know, down to DNAs per consultant, what is the latest that everything is telling us. And we during 18-19, we had 736 222 consultations, and like the previous speakers, we were equally awarded. It was in 2016 needs improvement, but we managed to get into the gold, the good, and I say it's gold. I think platinum's the next level up, but the gold award for outpatients. Next slide, please. So I know this is not a well-fitting face mask. However, it gives the principles that, yeah, maybe you should nip it up the nose a bit more and pull it in at the side. But, you know, all of a sudden we were having to make sure our outpatient departments were safe, but very much in a different way. How could we give our staff confidence to work in an outpatient environment when we didn't really know if patients were coming in that had COVID, didn't have COVID, had touched a banister rail that may have COVID, etc. But also giving our patients experience, giving our patients confidence. So we really flexed and varied our outpatient services and departments to sort of only have bloods being done in one area. So we took over our retinal screening department because retinal screening had closed during the main part of COVID. And we ran a blood taking service from there, which was away from the main tower block, and patients felt a lot more confident about coming there. We did bloods in another unit and almost a drive-in, drive-out, and again, just to keep patients happy and confident, because they did have ongoing healthcare needs. And no matter what virtual stuff you do, we still need to get fluids out of patients to test them to make sure that consultation is meaningful. We have done an awful lot with our patient letters. We have a flyer which actually has this picture on that goes out with every outpatient letter, assuring and reassuring patients about when they do come into hospital. We have done some posters. I don't know if you can see my Mona Lisa and whatever behind with the face mask, but again, just telling patients that it's going to be different. You're going to have to wait longer for your visit, etc., etc. So our comms guys have been amazing, and likewise with social media, drip feeding some things to change for our colleagues. Next slide, please. Now, this is not me being totally artistic, but this has been a really powerful picture just to show people, this is our ophthalmology department. And I don't know how many of you had lots of departments that were benched because you could get more patients in and it was standing room only. Some of our newer areas had chairs, so it made it much easier to remove a chair, etc. So this is the stark sort of the stark current situation with our departments. Okay, next slide, please. So I just wanted to sort of say from us, I mean, some of our challenges and our issues, we are looking at our recovery plans. We have services that have got big backlogs because a lot of our clinicians were clinically on the wards and not able to see patients. We've revalidated, we've validated, we've done everything you possibly can with validation, but we still need to sort of see patients. Some of our general outpatient departments, that was a more problematic in many ways with regards to accepting patients back, because if your renal guys need however many patients and they've all got to be seen by the multidisciplinary team, how do you cope with the rheumatology guys that need or want to see equally a similar amount, and your neurology guys, and just balancing that has been interesting, but I think we've almost got there. I mentioned about our clinical staff being otherwise engaged, but equally, and I'm sure we're not the only services where our outpatient nurses were redeployed as well. So it's just about getting that back. Social distancing goes without saying. I've mentioned the telephone clinics, video consultation, PPE. The first guidance that came out about PPE from the department was very much ward-based, and it took some time before the PPE in outpatients came out. But again, we're sorted. Those people that needed their fit testing, etc., has been done. Outpatients, we've got sneeze guards or perspex screens up everywhere. But then some of the emerging risks were almost not quite the mental health of our staff, but you were just straight on with it. And then if you stood back, it was like, oh my God, what's just happened to me? But it's about sort of making sure that you could communicate, because if we had some staff that had never ever worked in a ward situation before, were put into to that situation because they had some baseline skills, but you don't see many, being terrible, you don't see many dead patients in an outpatient setting. Whereas if you're in a ward department, you're more likely to come across having to do last offices, etc., etc. So that's something that we're still sort of working with. changing mindsets. You know, some of our colleagues have said, oh, you can never do it this way, or jumping and running with a hare without the evidence behind it. We've spent a lot of time just working through that. And then teaching requirements. We've got to remember that outpatient services are a teaching environment for student nurses. Our student nurses all came out all of a sudden, which was like, oh, how can we cope with them all? You know, our junior doctors, our AHPs, our audiology students, etc. But equally, as we've changed, how are we training people properly to do a video consultation? How are we training people to be assured that they can do a telephone consultation? Because it's not just picking up the phone, it is much, much more than that. It's engaging, it's completing the consultation but closing it down again, where we've had some consultants that, I need half an hour for a telephone consultation, people don't want to leave me. So it's about technique there too. Next slide, please. So I like to think that we had a really healthy toolbox. We'd already got a good understanding as to what our services provided. We were able to identify opportunities. Former colleagues spoke about sort of staffing. We did a baseline of all our nursing staff working in outpatients. So across all of the departments, we looked at what does your healthcare assistant do? So that's a band 2, band 3. What role is there for an emerging 4? What are your band 5s, 6s, 7s? Because there was a real disparity across the organization about who was doing what. So we established some core sort of principles around that. And, you know, if your band 5 is doing the same as your band 2, then that's something that we may need to look at. So we've done that actually over the last 3 years. We've looked at our opening hours. We regularly have clinics running in the evenings and at weekends. We'd already sort of done an analysis of the activities. What skills do you need to do to be able to do X, Y, or Z? We have a strong outpatient governance structure. So for outpatients, we have a monthly committee, which is chaired by me, and our co-chair is one of our directors of nursing, but that's all outpatients, not just those that are nurse-led. It is our physios join, our audiologists join, our radiologists join, etc. So it's across the piece. I have already mentioned that we've got an excellent BI system, so that is really supportive. We have hugely innovative staff. In fact, it was a untapped resource within our outpatient departments, and we've already established a lot of outpatient nurse-led activity. So it doesn't need a specialist nurse to come in and do something. Our outpatient nursing staff are very competent and very able to do things. So in ENT, our outpatient nurses are running their own clinics, which has reduced our grommet follow-up backlog list, which was purely consultant-led. Now it's nurse-led. Our orthopedic nursing teams have done amazingly with different roles and skills. Equally in our ophthalmology, we have lots of different staff doing lots of different things. Our outpatient nurses teach patients how to give methotrexate, etc., etc. So we already had a really good grounding there. Next slide, please. So I think I've already said our workforce have been amazing. They have been innovative. They've accepted being redeployed. you know, and really keen to be part of the bigger picture. We've had some fabulous real team sort of approaches to how can we do this differently. You know, we tried the sort of virtual fracture clinic sort of twice and failed. Now it's working fabulously because the pressure was there just to get it working. We had developed a HR metrics, which goes through our governance committee. So across all of outpatients, where we're able to see what our sickness rates were like, qualified, unqualified, we're able to see our mandatory training, our all sorts of rates across the whole service. That kind of went into not quite meltdown, but our HR colleagues weren't able to provide that. Most of our departments are an e-roster, but once you've got staff redeployed out, then you kind of lose that control. Likewise with sickness, and with some of the shielding, you know, there was very much, how long are you going to shield for? What does that mean? We have some staff who are fabulous that are over 70. So they were out for the first, was it 12 weeks, 16 weeks? How do they come back in? And then what do you do with qualified nurses that can't do non-patient facing duties? And again, it was looking innovatively at some of those challenges. Next slide, please. So I've said something about the sort of flexibility of moving our services around, satisfying what our customers wanted. And I mean customers, i.e. our health groups, our services, but equally what were our patients looking for as well. I've used phlebotomy. I saw there's a couple of chats come up about phlebotomy. Our healthcare assistants provide phlebotomy within our outpatient departments. There is also a phlebotomy service that our pathology service run for inpatient care. Now those guys are not known as qualified, but not known as clinical staff. They're not part of the clinical. I find it quite interesting, but they're not part of the clinical. They're not seen as an, sorry, what's the word? Anyways, they're just seen as phlebotomists, whereas a healthcare assistant can bring lots of other sort of skills. So our current phlebotomy service didn't offer afternoons or anything. So we redeployed some of our staff to support, to bolster up that service. We're part of the COVID, the Oxford trial. We've had various other research things coming, which has actually given opportunities to healthcare assistants about different roles that they could look at within the organisation. I spent a lot of time walking the floor with our senior clinicians about bringing clinics back. What do you think? What did they think we could cope with? How could they flex? And we started with a sort of blanket approach of, okay, 5 face-to-face patients and then build up. Now most of our services are seeing pre-COVID levels. We've always allowed people to change and enable change, which has just again come into its fore, and equally sort of what our patients want. Like previous people, we were rolling out fast and furious patient-initiated follow-up, but equally we're looking at our DNAs and why are patients not coming. Our DNA rate was probably like everyone 5 point something % most recently, because we've not seen that many, the activity's been lower. But again, it's being mindful there. We do have a patient rep on our outpatient governance committee, and anything that we're doing, even though he was working remotely, we asked him to give his view. Okay, next slide, please. Our audiology service, basically they closed for face-to-face, but they they had a pickup service, and this was just one of the things that was posted on it. NHS Choices, you know, we can do and did things really differently, but great for patients. Next slide, please. A couple of our healthcare assistants that were moved over to the phlebotomy service, and you know, they appreciated how difficult it is to take blood from a patient when they're lying in their bed and probably dehydrated versus the patients that come through outpatient. So by that, they've learned other skills as well. Next slide, please. So some of the things we're keeping most definitely, we're not going back, it's the new norm, and this is how we are going to operate going forward. There is a little bit of a bereavement process for some staff who keep saying, oh, when are we going to be full again? But actually we're not. This is the new approach. So again, rather than reading them all, I'm just very conscious of time, that it's about what can we do. And you know, when a staff member's been on a ward, they've maybe learned to cannulate. So how can we use that skill in outpatients, for instance? And our fracture clinic were casting in emergency care. And again, that is something that we'll continue to do because they're the experts with regards to that. Okay, next slide, please. And this was just a bit of a win, really. You always think you know where everything happens, but this was, I suppose, a classic. We were running the gastroinfusion service on one of our gastro wards. It wasn't in a great place. We had everybody in a small room, so of course social distancing, etc., etc. So we moved them to a temporary outpatient setting, and now they have a fabulous department to themselves, which works greatly. Patients were really happy. Our DNA rate sunk. We had feedback from over 100 patients, and Prof for that area has submitted an article, so that's pending. But you know, just the benefit for patients and everyone. Next slide, please. I rode in Lincolnshire, but you know, we're not there yet. We're still very much learning. There's lots going on. As I said, a couple of years ago, nobody really thought about outpatients, and then everybody became interested in outpatients. We're still very much there, and it's our chance to shine, but also to continue to make innovation and change. So that's a quick canter through some things, which is very different to the presentation that Graham saw a couple of years ago, but a different swing.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Eileen. And round of applause, please, for Eileen. I can see some hands coming. Conscious of time as well, and I see that you've addressed some of the questions that were within the chat already, and there is some stuff in there, Sheila, as well, that you might have a look at within the chat, which we could answer as part of your presentation in a bit around the NNUH side of things. But there is one question around. Bear with me. I'm trying to find out where that is. There was one question. If you raise your hand as well, please click on participant if there's something you really want to ask Eileen right now. Which duties have you found for your non-patient facing nurses, particularly the non-trained ones?
We have been looking at for non-trained. We I'm trying to think of who we've had non-trained that could. Because everybody wanted their departments cleaning initially, but that was just a sort of small part. I suppose we're quite lucky in it was more our qualified staff that we had problems with, because of, you know, people are on heavy, if they've got an underlying health condition, and, you know, whether it was right or not right. Traditionally, outpatients has been seen as the place to move nursing staff or others who have either underperformed in a ward situation or have a health condition. So we did have some initial problems with people shielding that perhaps were on methotrexate or one of the heavy drugs. We don't go for simple things nowadays and in our sort of advance in treatment. So some of those staff worked on the help desk. We had an employment services help desk for the patient rang, the staff rang in when they were sick. We've had some people phoning patients just to see if they're definitely coming to their appointments. We have some people been running education sessions, non-patient facing, but it's a different way to use their skills. So we've really looked at the individual and tried to sort of to work with the skills that they have.
Yeah. Thank you, Eileen. I know you're in the middle of your training at the moment, so we won't take you any longer. If there's any other questions that come in for you, I'll email them to you, and then we'll email them back out to the forum.
Okay, so, and lovely to contact with. Happy to contact with people afterwards. I know Sheila was hugely helpful when we were looking at our AA sort of massive rollout. But thank you so much.
Fabulous. Thank you, Eileen. Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care. Fabulous. Do we also have Royal Berkshire with us?
Yes, we're here.
Oh, hello there. Hello there. How are you?
So yes, thanks very much. Thanks for inviting us.
No problem.
So,
can you see the presentation?
Yes, I can see the presentation. If you be kind enough to scroll along as we
super. Over to Kathy and Tony.
Yeah. So I'm Tony Chen. I'm the Associate Medical Director at the Royal Berkshire Hospital, and I'm joined with Kathy, who will join me in the second half of the presentation. And we are looking at outpatient transformation at the Royal Berkshire Hospital. We sit within Berkshire West, and we are an ICS, first an ICP, and then an ICS. So we work very closely with other system partners. And what we've been doing since 2017, in the last 3 years, is to try to transform our outpatient service in light of national guidelines and best practice. So there are a few things here that we want to share with you today. So at high level, there are questions that we started to ask ourselves. An ICS is an integrated care system where we join up with our community partners and primary care. So we asked ourselves, are these appointments value adding? So we started to do triage. So we started from a few specialties doing triage. Now everybody in the hospital triages, all referrals. We also started to implement patient-initiated follow-up, where patients don't come back routinely. They're given a long appointment, and they call up when an appointment is needed. We moved into virtual fairly early. We were one of the pilot sites for NHS Attend Anywhere, and that really helped us when COVID came in March. We were already using it, and it allowed us to accelerate the use of our virtual clinics and telephone clinics as part of the outpatient transformation. As we work very closely with the ICS, we're also looking at pathway redesign, how we can work with our GPs. And so some of the care, the question is, where is the care best provided for our patients? It may not always be in secondary care that traditionally we think it does, but in fact, some of the care can be given in the community and can work closely through neighborhoods. So we have set up primary care networks, and consultants, specialists, nurses go out in the community to work within a hub and our neighborhoods so that we can provide the care outside the walls of the hospital. And we also have a plan to deliver care closer to home. So we have satellite sites or smaller community hospitals as part of our trust. The aim is to reduce the congestion. As you know, parking is already something that's been mentioned a few times. And the acute site is where most of the activity happens. But in fact, we can take a lot of the less urgent work off-site. And outpatients is one area where we can be seeing patients closer to their home based on their postcodes or where they work. So that's another strand of our work. And finally, we are now into a place where we can look at online booking and also looking at interaction through the patient portal. We have gone digital, and we are a paperless hospital. And also we are looking at room booking tools. And the first presentation was a good example of where a one-stop shop can work. And we're also using that model where people can come together and the patients don't have to attend too many appointments. So all of this we've been doing. We've been developing some best practice menus and guides for all our departments to kind of participate in all of these different things. We realize one size doesn't fit all. So for a general surgical team, to a rheumatology team, to a respiratory physician, you may select one of these different things to do, depending on your acuity, depending on your patient type, but everybody can be doing something to change from a traditional face-to-face appointments. Next slide. So the background to this is that we see over 630,000 patients yearly in our main site. We see another 100,000 in our satellite sites. And the aim is to reduce the number of patients attending the main site in order for us to develop space or provide space for the acute services. So our A&E is undersized, that needs to be expanded. We need a bigger ICU in the long term. So we are running out of space in our main site because we are right in the middle of the town. And therefore there's we don't have enough space to expand. And one of the aims is to reduce the congestion in the main site. But also we think of the patients, and we think that patient choice is really important. So we move into a hybrid model where patients can choose between a face-to-face, a telephone or video, depending on their clinical need. And that's something that is jointly decided with the clinician. So we have this kind of ability now to switch between different forms of interaction. We're also looking at our sites and how we can make sure that diagnostics are supported in the other sites. It is of little value if patients go to a satellite site and then have to come back to the main site to have their diagnostics done. So part of our strategy is to ensure that these sites are also equipped to do diagnostics. And the key thing that holds this all together is the data and the technology. So the really important is that when we look into this is how we can ensure that the patient record is available to all the MDT wherever you are. So we become a very mobile workforce, and we are more connected now to our digital technology. Next slide. So we started in 2017. We looked at the number of patients attending. So that's the blue bar on your left. The top bar is number of patients attending our main site. And we wanted to then chop it up into different components, percentages, to say how many can be doing through proper triage. We would not need to see them, or we could manage them in a different way. How many can go virtual? How many can be seen in primary care? How many can be seen in an off-site place? And then what we're left with is probably 50% of the original number, which allows us to meet our estate's demand. It also is better for the patient. They will be seen closer to home, and they're also more convenient for our patient. And on the right side is our satellite sites. The blue is the current, and in the future, we'll be aiming to double and all our other sites. So we have at least 3 other sites around the Reading within the 20-mile radius that these patients can be seen, because our catchment area would mean that it's closer for them to attend one of these sites than to come into the middle of our Reading site. So next slide. So when we think of outpatient transformation, it's actually an enabler for lots of other things that is part of our strategy. Firstly, in terms of the estate. So if we can do this, then we can free up space for us to develop some of the key things that we need to do on our main site. It also is better for our patients. It also allows us to work in a more network way with our GPs and other providers within the integrated care system. And so we have this ambition to kind of move away from the traditional face-to-face and provide for a more virtual type, digital enhanced type service. And we also think about in COVID, how this could all work. We accelerated the delivery of a lot of our digital clinics. We have provided a virtual space. A lot of us are in shared offices, so doing a virtual clinic. We have provided for a virtual hub. We make sure that the hardware is available, the IT, the software. So there are a lot of things that need to go alongside in order for us to meet the demands of social distancing and making our patients safe. And next slide. So this is our kind of a future strategy from where we started, when we are moving into an ability to kind of look at patients wherever they are in the system, triage them, ensure that they go into the right clinics, reduce our DNAs because we are now texting. We're also following up patients better. There's a patient portal where they can tell us how they are. We are collecting patient-reported outcome measures digitally before they come to clinic, so that we have an assessment of their disease state before they come. And also we're seeing whether we can see them in one of the community sites. And we have a digital first approach. If it can't be done digitally, then we would obviously see patients face-to-face. And key to this is the data. So we are collecting outpatient data carefully, and it's now part of performance reporting within our trust. So each department, directorate, division has their own matrix, their own KPIs, their own performance dashboard, because outpatients should be seen as key to the business of the organization, and not just a kind of something we do when we wish to, but it should really be seen, because our belief is that if we can manage outpatients well, we will start to reduce the amount of patients who need to come into the acute take or the emergency route, because a lot of outpatients can also move into the preventive model, where closer working with our GPs, touch points, looking at incidents and how we can make patients better before they actually need to come in when they're so unwell. So a lot of things are working, and thinking needs to go into that as well. So efficiency, looking at room utilization, and we've also now developed an central outpatients management structure to run the whole of outpatients, because it's quite disjointed at the start with different divisions looking after different sites and different people, to bring them all together within one system so that we can manage outpatient better in the long term. And so we will go into a safety and quality accreditation in the long term to ensure and see who has been able to do all these different things within the best practice menu. Next slide. So the Royal College of Physicians outpatient paper was a key paper in terms of thinking of longer term, with some good best practice into that. And we kind of see this as important. So outpatients should be seen as part of our key business, part of our strategy, and part of our performance reporting, as to know the health of the trust, and also the organization, and wider within the system as well. So I'm going to now pass to Kathy Green, who's our Outpatients Transformation Program Manager, to talk to you about the next phase, about the implementation and the recording of the data. So over to you, Kathy.
Thanks, Tony. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk a little bit about embedding the transformation as part of our program first, and then come on to the performance measures that we've actually operationalized within our organization. So in terms of the transformation and what we based this on, so we developed what we call our best practice menu, and this was based on new ways of working, new models of care that were already alive and happening in our organization, but they just weren't shared. They were also happening nationally. So we brought a menu together, and this is now being developed into the future menu. This was developed about 1.5 years ago now. So in terms of the opportunity, what it actually is, when it might benefit the service, and where it's happening already, and a lead contact. So for each of these opportunities, we developed a how-to guide for the operational teams and for the clinical teams. So instead of them having to write their own SOPs or develop their own patient leaflets, or understand how they even start to do anything like PIFU or virtual appointments, to improve consistency and to standardize this across the organization, we developed a central guide for each of these opportunities, and we had some real success on the back of them. After we developed these guides, we published them on our intranet, and we also went round and we did some lunch and learns. We shared the development of these guides with clinical teams, and we had a huge amount of interest. And we saw our PIFU numbers grow. We saw our virtual clinics rise. We've just actually developed the next 3 guides. Next slide, please. So we've developed our next 3 guides, and that was around delivering video appointments, which was really apt at the time. Remote monitoring. So we already have remote monitoring in some specialties, and also developing a good one-stop method of only really bringing patients to the hospital once. And we've worked quite closely with diagnostics and radiology on this part of the project. So all specialties now post COVID are referral streaming all of the referrals that come into the trust. We're currently working on developing a triage app, so it's actually easier for clinicians to refer, so they'll be able to do it much easier. We've got an RPA tool in place which is scanning in referrals into our EPR system. So what was happening previously is one of the holdups, or one of the barriers for admin teams and for clinicians, was actually they couldn't see the referrals electronically. The admin team were having to scan them in. We now have an RPA tool that we're trialing to do that for us. All specialties are considering PIFU, but also OFU, and these terms, probably you hear them, are used interchangeably. We've done some really great work with surveillance patients on OFU, which is open access follow-up, so not necessarily patients that need to come back. We're also expanding the implementation of advanced advice and guidance. We went live during COVID in cardiology, and we're due to go live in ENT very soon, and still working with GPs on improving pathways. Next slide, please. Yes, I'm happy to share some of my guides with you. I've just seen a pop-up in the chat. I'm more than happy to share those with you. Moving to virtual appointments, I mean, this has been massive for everybody. As Tony suggested at the beginning, we were in a really lucky position because we were first on the list with NHSI Attend Anywhere. So we had a slow start. We started in July last year with a few specialties, and by Christmas we had 7 specialties live with it. We now have every specialty in our trust, barring I think 2 using and live with NHSI Attend Anywhere. So we went from 5% virtual activity that we were performing as a trust to 42% during COVID. So we had a massive jump, and we had a really busy sort of 3 to 4 weeks rolling it out, because it was something that was sitting with us to go and actually train the teams. So we want to continue that momentum, just like everybody else has said. We want to lock in that process, and we want to make sure that we don't revert back to what's happened previously. Expand the technology to other areas outside outpatients, improve consistency of reporting, move to telephone appointments or video where clinically appropriate, and make sure that that's embedded within pathways so that actually patients can choose those pathways if that's appropriate for them. One of our holdups has been prescribing. I realise it's a national problem, but developing an e-prescribing solutions for patients that are seen virtually. So Tony and I are working quite closely with our pharmacists currently, and our GPs, to see if we can come to a solution for this. We're expanding remote monitoring in gastro, derm, respiratory and neurology, and we also now have surveillance lists for breast and urology patients patients that may have returned every couple of months for a PSA, for example, in urology, are now on a surveillance list within EPR. So their blood results are monitored, and they're not called in unless they need to be called in. Next slide, please. So again, another work stream is really looking at, as well as moving care closer to home, as well as looking at reducing non-value adding activity, increasing virtual. We've also got a big work stream around improving quality and efficiency. So we have Doctor, the text messaging service, which is way more than a text messaging service. So we're looking to trial that so patients can start actually booking their own appointments. We've got somebody within the outpatients team who's done some work with Reading Uni around AI algorithms. So actually we can now see which cohort of patients potentially might be more prone to DNAs. So we've implemented that the CAT teams actually call these patients. The RPA tool, which I've mentioned previously, and again, the patient portal is under development and is being trialled in some areas. So in terms of testing models for the future, very much looking at working really closely with our IM&T team to actually think about being a digital organisation, but also driving that forward. And I think definitely one of my learning from the last year was, luckily we'd established a really good escalation route and also a really good team of IM&T people that work really closely with us through COVID. Next slide, please. So outpatients and CQC. So in 2019, we landed outstanding. And if you look really closely on the right-hand side there, you can see Tracy Chappell, who is our outpatients sister for TNO. And TNO have been running for several years now a really successful virtual fracture clinic. They were also very clued up on what needed to be done for outpatients in order to land outstanding. So that was a real success. Despite that, as an outpatients team, we were hearing ongoing frustrations from teams who were really well staffed and being able to kick back on their heels. And, you know, we only see 4 patients in a list. And then because our outpatients is spread across the organisation, it's not just in one place. We were also seeing from our general outpatients that there was a lot of frustrations in terms of staffing. So on the back of a NHS benchmarking submission for outpatients we worked with our modelling team and informatics to look at how we could do a skill mix across the whole of outpatients, because historically what had happened is nursing skill mixes had just been done on what's been requested for staff. There'd no built-in methodology like there is for ward reviews. So that was led, it was a huge piece of work, but it happened from June 2018 to February 2019, and that was led by the Don for planned care. Next slide. And this was a really challenging piece of work, but a really great piece of work to get involved in because there was no methodology around this. So we worked with the modelling team to look at a time-based approach for outpatients. We used the benchmarking application of the model, and we also met with all of the teams to understand their services and for them to provide a clinical narrative around why the staff was needed. We did exactly the same as I think it was Eileen that said previously around the matrix of what the band 2s to the band 7s did. And we matched that. So the methodology initially was questioned. It seemed to work really well in general outpatient areas. And when we tried it it was actually ophthalmology, which obviously is a specialist outpatient area. It actually fitted them really well as well. So we had a few challenges from a couple of the departments who, although the narrative explained why they needed the staff, looked very much like they had more staff than was required. So we balanced that with some clinical indicators and the cost of the service for the outpatients and the time of the appointments. And actually we were in a position where we were able to move budget from I was going to say steal from Peter to pay Paul, but actually it was areas that really had more budget than others, so we were able to distribute it slightly more evenly. Next slide, please. So as well as all this transformation that we've been delivering, it's really important that we obviously bring it back to patients and patient stories. And we've done a huge amount of work with our patient leaders, ICP level and at patient experience level within our trust. So this was a really good story that we heard from a lady called Samita, who, that is not her real name, but Samita, we use her story. And Samita's a grandmother of 2 nursery-aged children. She'd been going in in and out of rheumatology for 26 years. She's found it hugely stressful to deal with where she would park, and then she's then got to mobilize and get herself to the department. She has caring responsibilities, and she'd been having twice yearly appointments for 20 years. So it was agreed that Samita would move on to patient-initiated follow-up pathway, and really the feedback from her has been really positive. So she was in a position where she did have a flare-up and she did need to come in, and she was seen within 48 hours, given a steroid injection, and actually she's back on the PIFU pathway. Now, I have touched base with Samita post-COVID, and she was due to come back for a follow-up in June for a face-to-face because her 2-year PIFU period was over. She did come back in June, and she was glad to come back in June. She may not have had massive meaningful intervention at that time, and she's been put back on the PIFU pathway, so she may not be seen for another 2 years, but I think it was reassuring to know that the appointment was there when she needed it. Next slide, please. So we're doing an ongoing piece of work around patient engagement at the moment. As you can see, we've seen a massive increase in the number of virtual appointments. Anybody that's using NHSI Attend Anywhere, I'm not sure how everybody else is sending out their feedback or their surveys to get feedback, but there is actually a way where you can automate that at the end of the call. I can see a few smiles, so maybe a few of you already know that. We did not know that, so we were reliant on the clinician sending out the survey, or we were sending it in the letter to the patient, but there is a way that you can automate that, so that's what we're doing moving forward. We've also developed a staff survey, because we were due to do a workshop for staff in April to get some feedback on NHSI Attend Anywhere in terms of clinical, I guess, job satisfaction for clinical staff. So we've also developed a staff survey that will go out at the end of the calls, so staff can complete that. This is really going to just help us improve the service and understand why the use of video or telephone is so useful to people. We are looking at contacting patients over the last 6 months that have firstly had face-to-face, some that have had video and some that have had telephone, to almost develop some more case studies for that. So it will also help us develop our plan forward now. I mean, as a trust, we're 3 years into our outpatient transformation journey. Where are we going next? So a few of the areas that Tony mentioned earlier is locking in that COVID activity, really looking at developing. We want a permanent hub now for virtual activity. We've had a semi-permanent hub, and we're going for a lot of estates work. So that is something that we're going to develop as part of our estates work. The outpatient accreditation program. We're developing feedback, as I've just mentioned, case studies. We're also still looking at whole service moves, so moving some face-to-face activity from our main site to alleviate the pressure on the acute site. EPR online booking tool, which has been amazing. We can actually really look at the true utilisation of the rooms rather than just what we're told. Recording, this is going to bring me on to my nemesis, which has been the last 2 months, performance reporting. So we started performance reporting in June. We started it at care group level. We now want it at trust level. We now want it at directorate level, and now we're doing it at specialty level. So it hasn't been plain sailing in terms of recording activity. Certainly through COVID, virtual appointments just happened. They weren't necessarily recorded as brilliantly as we would like, but we have worked with informatics now. We have a coding guide, and it makes up part of our how-to guide, so people know actually how they're recording this activity. In terms of handing over what we've done so far, a lot of the transformation is becoming BAU, business as usual now. We've handed over all of the training for our video appointments to our EPR back office. We've developed an amazing dashboard so that our operational teams can pull their own performance reports. And yeah, I think that's it. I think for me, moving forward, a big piece will be looking at almost rebranding our other sites. So we hear quite often that our patients really just want to come to the Royal Berkshire Hospital main site because they think that they'll get to see the top clinician, the top guy, whereas actually you get to see the top guy if you go to one of our other sites. It's just not called the Royal Berkshire Hospital. Thank you very much for listening.
No, thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Tony. And well done again on achieving that outstanding status. We're on our journey to outstanding, and quite a lot of this is really useful, especially so I like the outpatient menu, and Sheila's asked if you can share some of your how-to guides, if that's okay, if you would be willing.
Yep, sorry, that's fine. Yep.
Yeah, fabulous. Other than that, there are some questions that are coming through the chats. I think there's a couple of internal ones as well, so we can get to the internal ones. Conscious that we've so thank you very much. Is there anyone with any burning questions that they really want to ask Kathy and Tony? Because I'm conscious that we're running behind ever so slightly. Rachel's smiling. Fabulous. Anything that does come up, Kathy and Tony, I will email you, and we'll come back to you if that's okay. So thank you very much. Thank you. Would everybody who's on a video, would you like a 5-minute break before we crack on? Sheila, I know, have you got to shoot off or?
I've got another meeting at 3 o'clock now with the
Okay.
prison, so I'm going to have to do my bit in 5 minutes.
Do you want to do yours for 5 minutes and then we'll go for a 5-minute break?
That would probably make sense, yeah.
Because yours follows on quite nicely from everything we talked about.
It does, and thank you very much. That was a brilliant presentation, as all of them have been. So it's wonderful to see what's going on, and the more we can share, the better. So thank you.
Sheila, if you want to keep talking while I try and frantically bring your slideshow up. Somehow you've muted, Sheila. That might be
sorry,
me.
there we are. Yeah.
So
one of the questions was about the training. So we did do some training, sort of at-hand training, if you like, right at the beginning. But then because of COVID, we couldn't do that as easily. So we've done two things. One is we've created a sort of a guide to take clinicians through, how to attend anywhere, and how to set themselves up, etc. And we do have some help through our IT help desk. But then we also sent a series of links. It's almost self-learning, so to YouTube, to be able to allow people to have a look at the particular things that they need to do, be they an administrator or be they a clinician, etc. So there are some things there. It's not perfect. There is a paper going to our hospital management board next week, which is actually looking at more resources to try and help to give some specific help, what we call at elbow, for our clinicians as we roll this out further. So hopefully that will clear up some of those questions earlier. So great apologies for this, because I'm going to have to rabbit through this at a pace. But if anyone has any specific questions, please make sure you log them or email me directly, and I'll get back to you with that. So this is really just an update on where we are with our outpatient transformation program, and this is the roadmap in front of you. This basically gives us an idea of what we're trying to do over a period of time. So it's all of the things that we've talked about. Some things we're already on with. So you can see over on the left-hand side, there are virtual consultations and our PIFU appointments. They're all being rolled out as we speak. And we're working with specifically dermatology around telemedicine. And then there's a whole range of other things that you can see that are on the map there, which are around streamlining our administration, enhanced advice and guidance, centralized booking. We have two disadvantages, I think, that are really making it a lot harder for us to move at pace. One is that we're not a centralized outpatient service, and that we are, split up, as we all know, and that's something that I think we need to address. And the fact that we haven't got an electronic patient record. We are in the process of rolling out electronic document management system, which is basically digitizing all of our legacy documents. So the big notes that we have now will all become electronic, but we haven't got something that's proactive, that if you're sitting in an outpatient department or on a ward and you're writing into the notes, it instantly goes in. The STP is working on a solution for that, but I think we're probably at least 2 years away. And that really does hamper some of the things that we want to do around patient portals and allowing them, patients to be able to book their own appointments, etc. However, we can find some workarounds to get us as close to that as we can, because I'm determined we're not going to wait for 2 or 3 years before we get some of those things in place. So you presumably everyone will get a copy of these slides, will they, Graham? So they'll be able to have a look at that roadmap. Some things might actually move as we as we progress, but so that gives you an idea of the roadmap. Next slide, please. Okay, so that's the roadmap, and that's our transformation where we're wanting to get to. But actually, we're also living very much in the real world at this, at this time. So we know that we've got COVID. We know we're going into a second wave. But the ask from NHS EI for us was that we would get to as near normal pre-COVID levels in our services. Whoops. Can you mute everybody?
Yes, it is.
Great.
Yeah, I will do.
I will do.
It's WL, I think. Yeah. Okay.
Billy.
So, so to get to a near normal pre-COVID service levels, as I said, and that's a challenge, and largely because we're not normal, are we? We have distances of 2 meters that we're trying to adhere to. We have extra cleaning routines. We have a whole range of things that are going on that are, and patients actually voting with their feet. And some people did the first wave of COVID, and I think they'll do the same again, where fear overtakes and actually they don't want to come to the hospital. So actually trying to get to that is somewhat of a challenge, but that's what all of the divisions are doing. The ask is that we'll deliver 100% of pre-COVID new activity by the end of September. I know we haven't managed to do that, but that is the ask, and 100% of CT, MRI. We're also being obviously asked to continue to prioritise our clinically urgent needs, and that is hugely important. And I think certainly the clinicians within the forum, but everybody will actually recognise that throughout all of this, we mustn't take our eye off that ball. This whole pandemic is putting patients at significant risk through not being able to access the services, etc. So we've got to work twice as hard to make sure that we don't miss those patients out. We're also needing to maximise the use of virtual consultations and patient monitoring where appropriate, the telephone and the video. Again, in wave 1, clinicians really took this on. We have huge amounts of our patients actually being seen or being having their appointments through telephone, less so through video. And I know you can argue that some of our specialties are less able because of the nature of their patients to be seen through video, but actually we need to try and sort of balance that out a bit more. But again, that always needs to be clinically driven. Again, in a second wave of COVID, we're going to have to make sure that one way we do get access to our patients is by using these methods, because we will want to drastically reduce the footfall on our site. Again, in terms of trying to reduce that footfall, we also need to work outside of our boundaries and looking at collaborating with our primary care and developing advice and guidance to reduce that demand. So, trying to get our clinicians and GP surgeries to work together to understand and triage patients before they actually even get referred. So that's a piece of work that's going on, and also providing patients with more control over their follow-up appointment care. We've heard about PIFU, which is being rolled out in all areas. And again, some areas like rheumatology have really ran with this and their patients are loving it. Other areas are a bit slower off the mark, and some areas it's not quite as suitable because, again, of the nature of their patients. But we'll be working with each area clinically to do that. Next slide, Graham, please.
Sheila, conscious it's 3 o'clock if you did need to shoot, by the way.
Yeah, I think I've got just, right, I'll just quickly get through. I can see it popping up, but it's stressful. So where are we with restoration? There's a national Adopt and Adapt programme, which is really pushing and the development of advice and guidance. So as I said, we're already onto that, PIFU, virtual consultations, and also telederm. Currently, we've got about 42% of our activity is now being done virtually. So again, that's, really down to the fantastic teams making sure that our patients are safe. PIFU, 24 of our specialties have actually embraced PIFU, with around 2,000 patients on those lists and climbing every day. Whole system pathway redesign is probably, it's the biggest piece of this whole thing, if you like, because some of the rest of it is about technology, it's about some structural change, but actually really looking at the whole pathways for a number of our particularly high volume specialties will really help us to make sure that we get best practice, reduce variation, so therefore there's a quality impact for our patients, but also will help to reduce the footfall. We get smarter, leaner internal support processes and functions, which means, a bit like what we've heard from some of the other speakers, we'll be looking at, who does what within outpatients. Does it always need to be a qualified nurse or a registered nurse? Could it be somebody else? Can we move things around? How are our administrative staff used? Are we using them to the best of their ability? Are we giving them a job that actually is fulfilling? How does that fit with the whole world of virtual, etc., with new roles? And that moves into the second bit about workforce. And there is currently an admin review being undertaken by the individual divisions, looking at how that can be, how that can be worked through in a structured way, and that will be going to HMB next week. Again, looking at what appetite does the hospital management board have for real transformation in these areas, or actually are we just going to be moving things around on the boundaries? And finally, I think I've got one last slide, which really just reiterates. So you can see there the 6 work streams that we have for our outpatient transformation program. They all come together to do the things that I've just spoken to you about. But again, it's the specialty-led service redesigns which are absolutely key. And where you can get involved in your specialty, then please do. So I'm really sorry, that's a very quick whistle-stop tour through what we're doing. In summary, there's a lot of work going on. It fits very well nationally. We were doing a lot of this before actually we were told we had to do it as part of transformation. It's something that this forum was very instrumental in the early days, identifying what they thought was best for our patients and for our organisation, and also now sitting within the STP and what will be the ICS in the future. So thank you very much. And I think it's probably everyone deserves a break now. Thanks, Graham.
Yeah, no problem. Yes, thank you, Sheila. Any questions that do come through, as I have said for everybody, we will get them to Sheila and get responses for you. But yes, please do now have a break. Please come back to your screens. We are running a bit behind. So yeah, just have a break for about 5 minutes or so. And we will restart again in about 5 minutes' time, if that's okay. Thank you. Just while we're here, can we have a quick test from those that are presenting next? Just to make sure that your sound is working okay. If you're there.
Us? Yes.
Hiya.
Hello.
Hiya. How you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Not too bad. Sorry, we are a little behind.
That's all right. I think we should be okay.
I did see you join just as Hull were talking. Just as Berkshire were talking about their patient engagement piece and how they've had troubles. They might have said that I was smiling because I know that you've had a few problems with the form at the back end of Attend Anywhere.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess some of those things are quite expected as well. So yeah, no, it's a shame I didn't get to hear all of the stuff that they presented on, but I guess there'll be the recording for this bit, wouldn't it? So
Indeed,
we can watch
indeed.
later.
Thanks for putting me on point here. For everybody else that's still listening, yes, there will be a recording of this after the event that I will share on YouTube, so that anybody can go in and view it as well. Let me just double check. It was you guys that were straight after the break.
Yeah, it was us. I panicked for a minute thinking, did I miss my slot completely when I came in, and I thought, oh, where are we with the agenda?
Sarah's on the way as well. Super. I'll just see how many of you have managed to come back. I will stop sharing my screen, and hello everybody. I can see that Billy's not back at his desk yet. DR1 also. So we'll just wait a couple of minutes until they are all here, if that's okay. Jordan's here though. I've seen your questions, Jordan. I think some of yours relate to sort of some internal stuff, so we can sort that out after. It might be tomorrow before I get to some of those questions though.
Are you talking to yourself, Graham?
Always.
Okay, so far, it was good of Sheila to curtail her presentation
Indeed.
because she got the effective stuff across.
Shall we see if everyone's listening?
Yes.
Camera's back on, guys, so I can see that you're there.
Can you mute Billy? Because he clearly didn't mute himself, did he?
That's fine.
There you go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Rachel, would you like to introduce the...
Hello, yes. So our next presentation is from Deborah Whitaker. Transgender Policy and Guidance. And I think we've got a video, haven't we, Graham?
A video will be shared as part of this, yes.
Hi, I'm sorry. Debbie, unfortunately, cannot make the Outpatients Forum today, but Sarah and I are here.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Sarah.
Hello. We're being Debbie.
Hello, Debbie.
So we'll try our best in trying to present some of the work that has gone into the transgender patient policy and staff guidelines, which was Debbie and Emma Clark, who have been working on both of those pieces of work. Graham, will you change the slide for me, please? Thank you. So we thought it was best to kind of talk about the two documents and the work that has been happening in reference to the transgender patient experience, as well as the support for staff within the trust. And it makes sense to first look at our patient engagement and experience strategy, which was also launched at the AGM earlier this month. So our overarching ambition within the Norfolk and Norwich is to be an outstanding trust with exceptional patient and care experience, where people feel listened to, that action is taken where feedback is given, and that we work in conjunction with patients and carers, especially those who are seldom heard, to improve the services that we provide. And in line with this, it's about making sure that patient voice sits at the heart of everything that we do. So working alongside of patients and their carers is the norm and not something that is new to our organization. Next slide, please. Thank you, Graham. So there have been 2 documents that have been produced for the benefit of staff who might be transitioning or who may identify as transgender, and any patients that we come across or are providing care who may also identify as transgender. So the key point, we really wanted to pull out key themes for today's discussion or presentation. So from both the documents, there are themes that are common in how we treat our staff, but also our patients, and how we provide care and support transgender people who identify as transgender. So the standard of care expected is set out within our policy as well as our staff guidelines, and some of the work being done around both those documents has been a part of the implementation plan. So the guidelines you will find on the EDI intranet page under the LGBT+ tag. The patient policy is going through the process of being uploaded on the intranet soon, and will be on the available on the same tab as well. The next key point that came up was raising staff awareness and confidence in making sure that that standard of care and support is met at the Norfolk and Norwich. And we know that we need to do some staff awareness training, but also start the discussion of how we support and provide care for someone who may identify as transgender. Emma has kindly highlighted that there is some awareness training through Norfolk LGBT Project. I understand that yesterday's session did not take place due to technical issues that happened. However, there are more sessions planned, and there will be alternative dates sent out. So watch the space and make sure that if you're interested in having further training, that you are able to access that. The use of pronouns will also come as a part of those discussions within the training sessions, but also once you have sight of the documents, you might want to explore how you demonstrate the use of pronouns for yourself, but also use it in providing care for patients as well as working with colleagues. Next slide, please, Graham. Seeking feedback and learning from our patients and staff is again instrumental in both of these documents and why we're doing this work. So the implementation group has identified opportunities to learn from patient and staff feedback, and there will be a piece of evaluation and kind of sits in line with the next point, which is monitoring and reviewing compliance through everything that we do within the trust. So looking at complaints, grievance procedures, and patient feedback that we gather. Again, all of this has been instrumental in the work that the implementation group has been doing, and we've been looking at how we identify when the monitoring and reviewing of the feedback takes place, together with the HR teams, the patient experience, and the complaints team. Just wanted to check before we have the patient stories played, if there were any questions that people had. Okay, I don't see anything in the comments, so I guess we'll keep going. We have a video which I will say is an 11-minute video. However, there are some key themes that might be interesting for you to kind of hear out for. You won't miss them because they've themed the video according to it. But if we can play the video, Graham, please.
think a lot of people have a lot of stereotypes and generalizations about the gender binary. For a lot of trans people, it makes them question their interests, their expression. I second guessed myself a lot growing up because there were a lot of things I liked that were stereotypically boyish that I was very much into and still am into. I think there's a room for everyone to like what they like, express themselves however they want. I think if people can understand and get over their biases and their assumptions about how gender stereotypes work, I think it allows not just trans people but cis people as well to put aside their fears or their generalizations and express themselves in a more truthful manner.
If a trans person does not conform to the gender they are transitioning to and has a few aspects that are traditionally to do with their birth gender, it is viewed that they don't know what they're doing or that they're not actually trans enough. Trans women especially are actually really held to very unrealistic expectations of femininity that you would never really hold anyone else to. I prefer to wear jeans, t-shirt and a jacket usually, and that in no way means that I'm less trans or less of a woman. Everybody has a different self-expression, and it is really a very bad and inaccurate way of judging somebody's gender identity. The best way is just to ask them.
When I started going up to the gender clinic in Glasgow, I just went up dressed as I normally would, which was just sort of jeans and ripped t-shirt. And I didn't feel like I was actually being sort of taken seriously. In the second appointment, I was wearing more sort of stereotypically manly clothes, and I feel like I was being taken much better.
There are a large amount of people that need to access these services that actually do not identify as male or female, and identify either as a mix of both or in between or outside of that, or any combination of the spectrum of gender as opposed to being in the binary. And a lot of the time they are forced to pretend to be something they're not, or told that they should be something they're not, and that what they are is not valid enough. A lot of them do feel dysphoria the same as other people, but their gender presentation is just not to the strict standards that doctors have historically required from people. So as a result, they have been denied treatment that they need just as much as everybody else.
I think a lot of people still have this generalization in their head that there's male and female and there's nothing else, whereas in reality we've kind of figured out that gender is more of a spectrum, that there's male and female and then there's a lot in between encompassing non-binary and various other identities. The medical profession is a bit behind on this, and I think they need to get a bit more aware of issues regarding trans and non-binary people. There's a lot of difference between how people express themselves and how people identify themselves, and figure out ways to best serve the patient's needs rather than trying to fit people into various boxes.
So I was at a GIC appointment, and the doctor had asked me if I was interested in being referred for bottom surgery, and I said it wasn't really something I was interested in at that point, and she said, oh, that's fine because gender's a spectrum anyway, and if you're non-binary you probably don't want bottom surgery. And I thought that was quite a strange assumption to make, that just because I'd said I didn't want bottom surgery that I would be non-binary, because I'd always said that I was like a binary trans man. It was great that she kind of recognised that gender was a spectrum and that not everyone attending the clinic would be a binary trans person, but to assume that a binary trans person wouldn't want bottom surgery, or someone not wanting bottom surgery would be non-binary, I thought was kind of a bit of a jump to make.
Another thing that people have very much experienced is that when they're in the room with a healthcare professional, it feels like a power struggle, because the trans person's autonomy has been taken away in that situation, and their control over their entire life is in the hands of someone who will never truly understand. People need to pretend that they are something that they aren't. They need to perform to different standards of gender, different expectations of masculinity and femininity that cisgender people would not be held to in that kind of situation. There's also been a lot of experience of having to jump through hoops. It almost feels like you're having to do like an exam or a test to prove that you are trans enough, and to kind of have to live up to society's expectations as opposed to being true to yourself, which should be the whole point of this process.
It would be so refreshing not to be asked over and over again, why are you taking testosterone? Are you sure that skin condition is not because of, the hormone blocker? Gender-related medication does not have anything to do with my cold or my broken leg or, with anything to do but taking testosterone or taking hormone blockers.
Okay, so I had a GP appointment once and it was completely not trans related at all. And the GP was one I hadn't seen before, and she was very interested in me being trans, even though that wasn't what I'd agreed in for at all. Most of the appointment was her asking me questions like, oh, are you sure you haven't started taking hormones yet? And I was like, yes. And then like trying to kind of make the subject back onto what I was there for. And then she'd be asking questions again like, so you haven't taken anything, you haven't had any surgery, and saying, wait, so do you want to be a man? Like, do you sleep with men or women? I was just about to leave and she kind of said, oh, one more thing. So do you still get periods? And I was just like, yeah. And I just like ran out as fast as I could because I was just, this is so awkward. Like, I just wanted to like answer and leave, but I just thought it was kind of unprofessional.
I have been told before that I am not ready to go on hormones because of my mental health, and they thought that my depression was actually the reason why I was developing these gender issues. But in fact, it's completely the other way around. Because if somebody has crippling gender dysphoria and they feel this way every time they look in the mirror and every time they walk out of the house, of course that is going to then give anxiety and possibly depression and other things. And irrespective of whether a deed poll has happened, a trans person deserves to have their chosen name and their chosen pronouns respected. When I personally went to the GP and told them about my name change, they refused to update any documents without a deed poll, and even then they took a very long time to do so because they didn't see it as something that was that important. It is incredibly disrespectful to ignore this kind of thing.
So one thing I've found quite awkward is if I've had to go book an appointment for something that is typically what a cis woman might have, like a smear test or something, and I go to the desk and ask like to book in for that. The receptionist might ask me like, what would you want one of those for? You don't need that, you're a man, men don't need those. And then I have to go into detail and explain, no, it's because I'm trans, I do need those, some men do need those, and kind of having to educate the receptionist, but also at the same time out myself to whoever can overhear, because they're usually in quite a public place and there's not much privacy. Like, people stand quite close behind you, the chairs are kind of everywhere, and then you've got to go and walk and sit down and kind of just be around all these people who've just overheard you have this quite personal conversation, which is really uncomfortable.
When I came out as trans, I'd already done a lot of prior research into how hormones and transition healthcare works. But when I spoke to my doctor about it, he was unaware of certain issues. Recently, I had a problem with changing my details in the NHS, and he was unaware of how that works and seemed to just think I'm stuck with an M on my NHS details. But I went and did some digging and found that there are ways to do it, and I had to inform my GP and my practice how to do those things, and they did them, but they were completely unaware of how these processes work. A lot of the time, trans people are constantly having to do their own research and find ways to get the healthcare that they need and inform their GPs, when in reality, I feel more GPs, more doctors need to be aware of these issues forefront and able to inform their patients.
Every time I go to the nurse to get my hormone blockers, I need to tell her why she's giving me the hormone blockers, that they're not testosterone, even how it works within my body, what that hormone blocker does. She's a medical professional. She should know how all of this works. It's not her fault. It is that medical professionals don't get access to this kind of information and don't get a specific sort of course or set of guidelines of what this medication does.
Pretty much ever since I started hormones, I've basically had to speak to my GP and just let her know exactly how I'm supposed to go through with my care. Even from sending off my referral to actually be seen by a gender clinic, I had to explain to her what needed to be written in the referral, who it was supposed to go to. And I mean, I was only 15 at the time, and I was having to research how I should be taking care of my own health, when I kind of hoped to go to a professional and they would explain that to me. So like after, again, I started hormones, I was basically checking in with my doctor, making sure that they'd received my prescriptions, was checking up on when I was having letters come through from the gender clinic to them. So I was basically acting like a middleman the entire time. I kind of guess I was just hoping that surgeons and the gender clinics and my GP would all kind of speak to each other for me, rather than me have to intervene and be the middleman between all these services. And it was just a bit confusing, kind of not what I was hoping for out of the health service, to be honest.
It's incredibly important that general practitioners, especially in rural areas where they are less likely to meet a trans person in their everyday life, have enough training on at least the basics of transition such as for hormones and also the psychological issues that may go alongside being trans. I was denied blockers on the NHS originally by my local rural funding board because it was deemed unorthodox use of it and that it was a frivolous way to spend NHS money. And it is very important that we educate people that this is not the case and that we absolutely are deserving of it just as much as anybody else that's suffering with a hormone imbalance.
Not enough doctors, nurses, GPs are being educated in just basic trans healthcare. I think it would benefit a lot of people if there was just more basic training for GPs. So like, this is how the hormone process works. This is how you might use a binder, and just all these basic little things that can help them along and just alleviate a lot of the pressure on gender identity clinics.
A reason why it's very important also for general practitioners to have at least a basic knowledge is so that when a young trans person who has just realised they're trans comes to their doctor asking for assistance, even if the doctor is not knowledgeable on this specific matter, they should at least be able to point them in the right direction to access resources online or clinics or other services that can help them deal with those specific needs.
Thank you, Graham. Just wanted to share some of the stories and the experiences that people have shared in there. Although you might see that there's clearly some difficulties that people have had with kind of accessing the right sort of support from the primary care perspective. That it's the journey of the patient experience in terms of what they might have struggled to receive support from their GPs and their general practice surgeries, how that carries through in terms of the patient experience. I just got distracted by some of the comments, but I'm glad that the video was informative, although it wasn't. It's not of patient stories from within our hospital. We're looking at how we can start capturing some of the experiences that people have, and we use those as tools to learn from. I just wanted to invite Sarah. Was there anything that you'd like to add in terms of?
I think to say that whilst they weren't our patient stories, they are quite common stories and experiences, and certainly some of the concerns and complaints that we have seen in the organisation mirror what was shared through the filming, and most is down to communication, misunderstandings, as well as outright discrimination from people at times. But we are all on a journey with this. And I think the other point to make was, whilst we can't share with you today the patient policy, the two policies, one for staff and one for patients, very, very similar, so they're very mirror policies, because of course people face the same issues, whether they are patients or staff members, in terms of respect, being supported, and their particular needs. And also just to say that it's also an iterative process with this. So we wanted to kind of get going with launching it so that we can start to think about the issues and how to be truly person-centered in our approach. And the policy may well evolve over time. So rather than wait till we got the perfect version, we wanted to get going with it so that we can work together to craft the right policy in the end. And I think from our point of view, from a sort of patient experience perspective, and thinking about how you might want to move forward with your own departments, is to look at the policies, think about signing up to some of the training and reflection opportunities, so that you can really then think about your own work environment and your own group of patients who might have specific needs, particular requirements. Just thinking of some of the comments in the film around some of the young people who may have transitioned to may still require attending clinics that relate to their previous gender. So just have the sensitivities around that. So this really is a kind of beginning of a journey around this, and it'd be really interesting to work with you all going forward to really make sure that everybody's service is accessible as possible to all our different patient groups, and we will support you as best we can in that journey, as will our LGBT staff network and local charities and organisations out in the community who can help us as well with thinking these things through.
Great, that was us, Graham, I think.
Thank you very much. I've got 3 screens going on here, and I was trying to find my unmute button on one of them. Which is thank you guys. You've mentioned that you've been looking at the comments as they've been coming through. So yeah, so really useful. Have you guys got a part B to your presentation though? Is that fair?
Yes, our part B is Ruby, who is waiting in the wings.
Here I am.
Hello, Ruby.
Hello.
Hello. Can you see your slideshow coming up right now?
I can. There it is. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Ruby. I'm another member of the Patient Engagement and Experience team at the Norfolk and Norwich. And as another part of the ongoing work we've got in our team focused on equality, diversity and inclusion for patients at the Trust, where a strand of our work is around the Equality Delivery System, or otherwise known as EDS2. And the EDS2 is a tool that's used within the NHS to improve the services we provide to our patients and staff. It focuses on how we can achieve better outcomes for patients and staff. And, oh, sorry, I've got a bit of a technical glitch. Can you still hear me?
Yes, and we can see you now too.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, so it focuses on how we can achieve better outcomes for both patients and staff, and it aims to ensure adherence to the Equalities Act of 2010. It sets out 9 main outcomes for patients and 9 for staff, and our team are focused on the patient-focused outcomes. And the 2 main goals of the patient-focused outcomes are how we can better health outcomes for patients and improve their access and experience of our hospital and services. So this slide here is just a screenshot of part of the EDS2 summary document, which was previously published for the Trust. And you can see there that it's got each outcome listed. There were multiple pages of this document with a space for evidencing that's previously been collated and informed the rating for how well as a Trust we're currently meeting the needs of patients with particular protected characteristics that are listed within the Equality Act. The grading area is something that we seek to reevaluate on a yearly basis, and we have currently only been using staff perspectives, but it's something that we're looking to start actually engaging with the patients and seeing how they feel we're doing for meeting their particular needs if they're living with a certain protected characteristic or characteristics. If I could have the next slide, please, Graham. Thank you. So as I said, there are 9 outcomes, which are 1.1 to 2.4, and they're spread across 2 main goals. The first being better health outcomes for patients, and the second being improving patient access and experience to our services. And each outcome on that particular summary document has got its own aim, which are listed in the document, which we can easily hand out to anyone that would like to see a copy if you haven't already seen a copy yourself outside of this forum. Next slide, please, Graham. Thank you. So the question for us was, what do we need to do to actually make sure we're capturing all the evidence we possibly can for this document across the Trust? So we've been identifying current practices in all of the divisions by attending their local equality and diversity group meetings and other teams within the Trust to identify the really good practices and some of the brilliant projects that have been going on that we can capture within the evidence to show what we are doing to address the needs of people with diverse needs, but also to identify potential areas for improvement so we can start to look for action planning both divisionally, trust-wide and within specific teams also. We're looking to develop some consistency around the amount of evidence that's in there. So some areas have previously been lacking, and hopefully that's something we've captured more of because we've been doing some outreach work to each of the divisional teams. And we're really keen to ensure we are actually incorporating the you said we did approach to all the evidencing we're providing to show that it's because we've been hearing from patients how they're experiencing our services that we've sought to find ways to improve or things that we could do to meet the needs of those patient groups. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we've been going out to all the divisional ledgers to hold workshops, but what we wanted to do is bring it to this outpatient forum to make sure that anyone that hasn't already had an opportunity to add any great practice that they're aware of within their own teams, divisions, or individual projects you might be working on, is that we make sure we've got that within our evidencing that we're collecting. So what we'd like to do is invite attendees of this forum to complete an evidencing sheet, which we can include anything that you incorporate into that, into our evidencing summary for the trust, which we'll be looking to publish in January next year. So just the next slide, please, Graham, and I'll start to talk through the document that we've got available. So at the top, you can see there just a screenshot. So each outcome is listed in turn, and there's a box there where you can enter literally anything you can think of that's good practice to ensure we're meeting the needs of the patients that we're providing services for. And I might add also that if there's something you want to add and it doesn't quite fit into one of the outcomes that's listed, please feel free to just note it down and we'll do the work and work out where it should fit, because we're having to do it multiple times across different teams. And the next one, please, Graham. Thank you. So as I said, feel free to get in contact with us so we can send you a copy of the current summary document so you can see what's already in there, and a copy of the evidencing document so you can give us any further evidence you'd like to provide and ensure that we really are shining a light on the good practice that's going on at the Norfolk and Norwich. But we might ask that if you haven't got anything, that you could possibly get it to us by the 23rd of October, because we're hoping to get the summary document ready to publish in January, as I said. Thank you.
So that's next week, next
Friday.
By next Friday.
If at all possible. We're aware that it might run over, but you've got to try.
Please, everybody who's
Please.
there. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ruby. Has anybody got any questions for Ruby while she's here? And the team, and Sarah and Amrita. If you do have any as they come to you in reflections, please do just put them in the chat and we will get them to those guys. I've also, so thank you, Ruby. And in order just to quickly catch up on everything else, Nigel Briggs, we've got a section on transport now. Nigel, are you there? He says, hopefully.
I am, Graham, yes.
Oh, fabulous.
But I'll leave it to my fair lady, Kerry, to introduce everything first, if that's okay.
Thank you.
So, hello, good afternoon, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Kerry Radley. I work in trust facilities, managing the PFI contract and several other non-PFI contracts. But my role also involves the point of contact for the non-emergency patient transport. So really, it's kind of the link between yourselves and ERS and ESEC for any escalation purposes. So at this point, I will hand over to Nigel, who can go through some data and any questions that you might have. So over to you, Nigel.
Thank you very much. So in regards to patient transport services, the current facts are that we are operating at reduced capacity due to the restrictions that have been imposed on patient transport by Public Health England. And we've all been suffering those restrictions throughout. But the impact to us per se means that we can only give a 70% vehicle occupancy compared to pre-COVID figures. What does that mean to us and to you? Essentially, the current patient transport figures, we can only operate with that reduced capacity at 89% of where we were pre-COVID. Turn my video on as well so you can see me. This is due, obviously 89%, that's a good number, but it's not the 100% we want to be at. Part of that is due to the fact that patients are receiving virtual appointments and they don't require the transport, which is good. That's a great process, and that helps alleviate the pressures and stresses on us. But with 89% still coming through and we can only offer a 70% occupancy, there is a shortfall in there. So we've had to increase the demand with overtime. We've had to increase the requirement for third-party transport. That's not easy in the current climate because all organisations such as East Ambulance Service are also taking third-party people in to assist with their processes, and rightly so, being a frontline system with East, they have the priority. So if they request a company and we request the same company, the obligation is that that company must go to East first. So it's difficult. We've seen a massive increase in discharges through the hospitals, 28% up based on the same period last year. But with the additional stipulation that these discharges now have to be actioned within 2 hours. The biggest increase that we see in discharges is patients that still have mobility, i.e. walking patients or C1 patients that require some assistance, i.e. with a walking frame, walking sticks, etc., to get to a vehicle. This is the key focus of those patients. This is the area that we really have to address within the hospitals and within the wards and the departments. There is alternative transport, there is friends and family, there are volunteers, there are taxis that can take these patients because they have mobility. And those areas must be used following the Public Health England pathways that were sent out. We are the fourth on the pathway, not the first, but we seem to be being the first and being that first point of call. And we've got to maintain the space within our vehicles for those that are in the most need and those that are vulnerable and have no other options. And for every patient that we take that has their own mobility or has other options, it just decreases the options for these others. We did raise this in June with the CCG. We've put in a request and a white paper to them to highlight where we believe the pressures were going to come as we came out of COVID and came out of the lockdown, what that would mean and what impacts that would have. That white paper is still going through the CCG currently. It's not been ratified or approved. So we're still in this position of being 70% occupancy, but with 89% of requirement being placed on us. I have reproduced a poster, if I can achieve technology and share my screen. You have to tell me, Graham, if that's come up or not. Can you all see that? No. Yes. No.
No, can't see it. Can't see it. Although, hold on, it says Nigel Briggs has started to share, so maybe it's coming through. There we go.
Right. So we've produced this poster, which I've sent out to the Norfolk Norwich, the Queen Elizabeth, James Paget, Cromer Hospitals, all the key users of the NEPS service. And it's just to reiterate, before we book the transport, whether it be with ERS or whether it be with ESEC, we're in exactly the same boat. Our colleagues at ESEC are in the same position as us. We've got to try and use these other processes and other facilities first, because the demand on us of 10,000 patient journeys a month at the moment, compared to about 11.2 pre-COVID. So we're not far off that total capacity. And we haven't got that space. And sooner or later, when I can't bring patients in or I can't collect patients, the impact to the hospital of not being able to free up those beds is just going to work its way back to the front door to A&E, and you won't be able to move anybody out of A&E. So it's as a team and as a group, we've got to work together with us, in getting these patients moved, but in the best possible way first, and that is friends and family and volunteers. I know it kind of goes against the grain to ask people to come to the hospital when we don't want people coming to the hospital, but friends and family need to be better utilised, and we know they're not being currently. An update as well with mental health. There has been a significant increase in mental health from January, February this year. We were averaging 50 patients a month purely as a mental health patient, and we're now up to 80 per month. That's a massive rise. But also in the risk levels, we've seen a significant rise from an average of 5 patients per month that were at the highest risk level of risk 5 to now we're seeing 12 and above every month. What that means is I have to put 3 mental health teams to each one of those journeys, which takes away the ability to do more. And it's not something you can control, but what we do need is a bit more notice and communication on that. When we know we're going to have patients that need transporting Friday this week, Saturday this week, let me know today. I can arrange for additional crews and additional teams to be here to support that, and it doesn't impact the discharges and the rest of the hospital process, which is what it does do when we don't know. It's important, for those of you who don't know, when we take the bookings on the day, 64% of all discharges we get are booked after 12 o'clock on the day that they're required. So we don't get a lot of notice of that. It doesn't enable us to plan very well. This is something we're working on with Kerry and her team and with others, and it has got better. So, you know, the work that Kerry and her team are doing is working, but it's still a long way, 64%. That's significant. So mental health as well, the other action or point we're seeing with mental health is a lot of out of county journeys. We're going to Somerset, we're going to Brighton, we're going to Blackpool. Again, these are all day journeys there and back. And without the pre-planning, these are often delayed and cause then the additional knock-on delays to the rest of the system. So in summary, what am I asking for? I'm asking for all users to explore all alternative options, to exhaust those first before coming to us, to give us better planning time, so communicate with us as early as possible, to give us that time to plan and bring in the additional resources so that we don't impact on the day-to-day. And we need to understand this is a long-term problem, so there's no point getting a quick fix now, because in a month or two's time that quick fix won't be there anymore. We've got to plan for the long term of this. The measures we put in place need to be robust enough to see us through that long term. That's my ramble over. Thank you.
Could I just add as well, though, just that if the situation with the patient changes, for example, if for whatever reason they came in by transport but actually didn't need transport home or whatever, that we notify the providers as soon as possible as well, because we find that sometimes that communication doesn't always happen. Is that right, Nigel?
Yeah, it is. I mean, on average, we have 450 aborted journeys every month, and that's just a total waste of that precious resource at the moment. And those 450, 69% of those are because either the patient's been admitted, didn't require the transport, has made their own way home, but we haven't been notified, or they're not ready. They're not ready to travel.
Thank you. I think we've got Elaine on the line as well, or we did have. I'm not sure whether she's still here now.
Yeah, I am still here. I can only repeat really what Nigel has said. Our activity, though, is up to 92%, and we haven't really seen an impact on reduced journeys because of virtual appointments. We mainly serve the James Paget Hospital, and our vehicles are on less percentage. Some of our ambulances can only take 2 patients now, which is down to 50%, and a voluntary car is 33%. We also have taken a measure of stopping anybody travelling with an escort unless they have no capacity. We're not saying the escort can't attend the appointment, but they have to make their own arrangements to the hospital and meet their family member at the hospital. It's not ideal, but it's to be able to get the patients to their appointments that we've had to make this decision not to travel escorts. Again, we are always being asked to take patients home who appear to be able, when we get them home, to have family with cars who could have collected them. Patient choice is also giving us difficulties. We've always had patient choice, but we can have 4 or 5 vehicles, sometimes 6 vehicles a day, with 1 or 2 patients going to Sheffield, Addenbrooke's, and various hospitals, and we lose that resource out of the area from where we are all day. The other thing we have an issue with really that causes us difficulties in planning is that the hospital can give us 10 discharges in one day, and another day they can give us 45 discharges in one day. So that, and we don't know that until, as Nigel has already said, usually lunchtime on the day. And that is very difficult with the number of outpatients that we have to return for us to be able to move the patients that we're being asked to move. And that's really all I can do is summarise and back up what Nigel is saying. We are really struggling with this reduced capacity on the vehicles to meet the ever-growing demand that we are facing. And a new demand that we are now facing is hospitals are trying to catch up appointments, and they're offering later appointments, often at a time we do not have the resources available. But that's where we are today.
So I think they're all really valid points that have been made. And has anybody got any questions they would like to ask?
I know Rachel's put a couple of things in the chat along with Nick and Chrissy as well. I didn't know. And Rachel, are you there?
Yes, I am. So I want to say a massive thank you to Nigel and Elaine, because I have to say your services are amazing, and your staff, your teams that come out the cruise, they're all really supportive and helpful. And that's not just in the COVID period. They've they really are a great bunch. So thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to thank you for that, because we don't always get positive feedback, especially when patients are waiting longer than perhaps they would like for transport.
Of course. But also, like Chrissy says, what if there's anything we can do, because obviously we are big users, aren't we, outpatients? So if there's things we can do that will push, we've put the posters up, and we really need to encourage patients and their carers that come with them to really think about alternatives. They're, a taxi if it's in the city, why not? Or your neighbour is not, some people feel awkward or embarrassed, but I'm sure the neighbour would be very happy to help. So those kind of things we could sort of gently suggest and help with, couldn't we?
Good. It's Nick Pember here. Just to kind of go on from that, really. So yes, we'll have the posters in the departments, but of course we don't do the booking in outpatients for the journeys. It's actually done by the patient themselves. So we can't influence the numbers that are booking and things like that. And unfortunately, they won't see the posters till they get to our departments. So I go back to what you were saying about a publicity campaign, really. You suggested in the text box that maybe a publicity campaign to the wider public outside of the organisation, because until they get to the organisation, it's too late then, they've already booked the transport. I also just wondered from Elaine and Nigel whether we have any handle on whether most of the burden, the additional burden, is perhaps day cases or inpatients rather than outpatients, because my experience of outpatients at the moment is we're doing a huge amount of virtual work, much less in the way of face-to-face. I know some departments, particularly in surgery, are doing quite a lot face-to-face, but certainly my own department, we're only operating about 50% capacity face-to-face. So I'm just trying to work out where the outpatient additional burden has come from, really. But certainly your suggestion about a publicity campaign outside of the organisation would be a very good one.
Yeah, if I come back on that, we have with the CCG asked for the protocol to be changed so that the patients cannot make the bookings. It needs to be done by the departments, because that way it can be controlled better. And the CCG are currently looking at that. It's all part of the white paper in the process that we've put in. Because for that period of time, whilst we're dealing with the pandemic and the aftermath and potential additional waves, that onus needs to be held by somebody who can make those decisions. So they're looking at that, and the activity is outpatient. That has been the increase. Whilst your department, you may be doing more virtual, others are not. And so that is an increase, and the discharge is an increase of somewhere in the region of 36%, I think, higher discharge numbers currently than where we were pre-COVID. So a combination of those outpatient activities and the discharges is where we're seeing the increase in volume. But don't forget, during COVID, we were down to 7,500 journeys a month, and we're now back at 10,000, and we would normally be doing just over 11,000.
It's not, of course, always just the acutes that have the outpatients. There's outreach clinics now opened up again, and they are working virtually back to where they were pre-COVID. And it has to be remembered that most of the patients that we take are the very elderly and frail and do need ambulance transport as opposed to taxis or cars.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay, has anybody got anything else they want to ask? Because I'm very conscious that we've got like 4 minutes left. And we just wanted to say from the Outpatient Forum, thank you so much for coming and attending. It's been a really interesting afternoon. I hope you've all felt that too. And we just wanted to end on a sort of future-proofing discussion, and also to talk about the Shared Decision-Making Council. So a quick update on the Shared Decision-Making Council. We've had 2 meetings now. We're in the process of electing a chair, a deputy chair, and a secretary. The secretary may be combined with the deputy chair, depending on how the voting goes. We've got our next meeting on November the 6th, so we will keep you updated. Me, Nick and Chrissy are all on the Shared Decision-Making Council, and we really want people from the Shared Decision-Making Council to come on to the outpatient forum as well, so that there's a cross-pollination of ideas and sharing. But it is going really well. So with regards to the forum, any interest in joining the steering committee or joining the Shared Decision-Making Council would be greatly appreciated. I see we've got great representation from Chroma. So, you know, we'd love to have representation from Chroma on the steering committee. We just need more people, really. So, Chrissy and Nick, anything else that I've missed off?
No, we're fine. Thank you very much.
Okay. So I think just thank you all very much and have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please fill out your feedback. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Take care.
One way waving at him, it's gone.
You're still here, Rachel.
Am I? I'm not on mute. But my camera's gone. Anyway, I don't know why I'm waving at you because you can't see me. Bye-bye, Graham.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.